Hi guys! Tonight we're travelling into a world of vast forests, winding rivers, towering mountains, and endless horizons. You stand at the edge of the early American frontier, where the settled towns of the east slowly fade behind you, and an immense wilderness stretches beyond sight. The air smells of damp earth and pine needles. Morning mist hangs low above a quiet river. Somewhere in the distance, the cry of a hawk drifts through the sky. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you are settling in, feel free to share your location and local time in the comments. It is always fascinating to see where listeners are joining from around the world. Now, dim the lights. You find yourself living during a remarkable period of history. Much of the continent remains unfamiliar to people living in the growing towns along the Atlantic coast. Maps contain large blank spaces. Rivers flow through territories that few outsiders have visited. Mountain ranges rise beyond the imagination of most Americans. Yet change is already underway. The story begins with fur. For centuries, European demand for animal pelts created a thriving international trade. Beaver fur became especially valuable because it could be turned into fashionable hats worn by wealthy gentlemen across Europe and North America. What appears at first to be a simple fashion trend would help drive exploration across enormous distances. The beaver became one of the most important animals in economic history. Historical records preserved by merchants and trading companies reveal how valuable these pelts were. Cargoes travelled thousands of miles before reaching distant markets. Every pelt represented weeks of labour in remote regions where survival itself was uncertain. You can almost hear the rustle of wet fur being unloaded from canoes along a muddy riverbank. At first, much of the fur trade operated through established networks involving indigenous nations, European traders, and colonial settlements. Native communities possessed deep knowledge of local landscapes, animal behaviour, seasonal movements, and travel routes. Without that knowledge, many early trading ventures would have failed. The frontier was never an empty land. It was already home to diverse nations with their own histories, traditions, alliances, and territories. The mountain men who would later become famous entered a world that had long been understood by others. As your mind drifts deeper into this landscape, you begin to see how the future mountain men emerged. They did not appear suddenly. They grew from decades of expanding trade, exploration, and opportunity. Young men heard stories. Stories travelled quickly through taverns, trading posts, and rivier towns. Tales spoke of enormous beaver populations beyond the Mississippi River. They described fertile valleys, clear streams, and distant mountains that seemed almost mythical. Many listeners never left home. Others felt something stir inside them. Perhaps it was ambition, perhaps curiosity, perhaps simple restlessness. Whatever the reason, increasing numbers of men began heading west. One mainstream historical fact supported by extensive research from major institutions including Harvard University and the University of Chicago is that the fur trade played a significant role in driving exploration throughout large portions of North America during the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Economic incentives often pushed explorers into regions that governments had barely surveyed. Money and geography became partners. The earliest generations of trappers faced extraordinary challenges. Roads were scarce, reliable maps were rare, supplies remained limited. Communication with distant settlements could disappear for months at a time. You walk beside a riverbank in your imagination. Cold water slides over smooth stones. Wet leather boots press into soft mud. The morning air feels sharp against your skin. Small details matter in this world. A damaged canoe can become a disaster. A lost horse can threaten survival. Everything depends upon preparation and luck, a great deal of luck. Yet the wilderness also offers beauty that few people in the settled East will ever witness. Vast herds move across open plains. Snow-covered peaks catch the first light of dawn. Forests stretch beyond the horizon without interruption. For a moment it feels as though the continent itself is breathing. The future mountain men become students of this environment. They learn to observe weather patterns, animal tracks, water sources, and seasonal changes. Success often belongs to those who pay attention. Failure can be expensive, sometimes fatal. The growing frontier economy attracts entrepreneurs eager to organize large trapping expeditions. Businessmen recognize that individual trappers can gather valuable pelts, but organized companies can collect far more. Competition increases rapidly. Soon rival enterprises race toward the same distant territories. Each hopes to secure the richest trapping grounds. Each hopes to gain an advantage before competitors arrive. The result is a remarkable surge of Western movement. Historical evidence from company records shows that large trapping operations became increasingly sophisticated during the early 19th century. Supply chains extended across thousands of miles. Goods moved by river, horse, wagon, and human labor. Behind every famous mountain man stood an entire economic system. Blacksmiths forged tools, merchants extended credit, boatmen transported cargo, craftsmen produced rifles, traps, blankets, and equipment. The frontier depended upon countless unseen woes. As evening approaches, your thoughts settle beside a small campfire. Sparks drift upwards into a darkening sky. Wood smoke mixes with the scent of pine. Somewhere beyond the glow of the flames lies an enormous wilderness waiting to be explored. You're standing at the threshold of a new era. Many historians agree that the early fur trade created the conditions that encouraged Western exploration. Although scholars continue debating the precise balance between economic motivations, political ambitions, and individual curiosity, the exact mixture remains difficult to measure because human decisions rarely emerge from a single cause. Perhaps that uncertainty makes the story more interesting. People are completed, history is complete, and the mountain men who will soon enter this narrative are no exception. Some seek wealth, some seek freedom, some seek adventure, others simply seek another chance. The years ahead will carry them across rivers, deserts, forests, and mountains. They will discover routes that later generations used to settle the American West. They will endure hardship beyond ordinary experience. They will leave behind stories that grow larger with every retelling. But for now, the journey is only beginning. The campfire crackles softly. The river continues its endless flow. And beyond the darkness, the frontier waits. The frontier waits patiently, and before long you begin moving toward it. The familiar settlements behind you grow smaller with every mile. Roads become rougher. Houses appear less often. The landscape slowly transforms from occupied territory into a vast region where certainty becomes a luxury. The journey west is not a single event. It is a gradual surrender. You surrender comfort first, then predictability. Eventually, you surrender the reassuring feeling that help is always nearby. Ahead lies the country that will shape the mountain men. Your horse moves steadily through rolling grasslands. Leather creaks softly with each step. Dust rises beneath hooves and hangs in the warm afternoon air. The smell of sunlit earth mixes with the scent of worn blankets and oiled equipment. Everything you carry matters. Every pound must justify its place. A trapper entering the western wilderness cannot afford unnecessary possessions. Traps, ammunition, blankets, tools, knives, cooking equipment, and spare clothing consume valuable space. The frontier rewards efficiency and punishes carelessness. As you travel farther west, rivers become highways. Long before railroads appear, waterways serve as the great transportation network of North America. Canoes and boats move people, trade goods, and information across extraordinary distances. Major rivers connect distant regions in ways that roads cannot. The Missouri River becomes especially important. Its muddy waters wind deep into the continent, offering access to lands that few Americans have seen. Travelers describe immense distances, unpredictable currents, and landscapes unlike anything found farther east. Your mind drifts to the deck of a riverboat. The air smells of wet wood and river mud. Water slaps rhythmically against the hull. The current carries you toward unknown destinations. Around you stand traders. labourers, interpreters, hunters, and adventurers, each chasing a different future. Some will succeed, others will vanish from the historical record entirely. This uncertainty defines frontier life. Unlike later generations, many early Western travellers possess only fragments of geographic knowledge. Maps exist, but large sections remain incomplete. Rivers sometimes appear in the wrong places, mountain ranges are misunderstood, distances are often underestimated. The land keeps its secrets. Even experienced travellers encounter surprises. One mainstream historical fact supported by research conducted at institutions such as Yale University and Stanford University is that geographic knowledge of the American West expanded dramatically during the early 19th century through exploration, trade expeditions, and government surveys. Information that later generations would consider basic often had to be gathered through difficult first-hand experience. Knowledge arrives one journey at a time. You begin hearing stories about distant regions. Some describe fertile valleys rich with game. Others speak of harsh deserts where water becomes precious. Mountain ranges appear repeatedly in these accounts, rising like enormous barriers across the horizon. The Rocky Mountains seem almost legendary. For many Eastern Americans, they represent the edge of practical knowledge. Beyond them lies mystery. Beyond them lies opportunity. Beyond them lies danger. As evening settles over the prairie, you notice how different the world feels away from towns and cities. There are no streetlights, no church bells marking the hour, no crowds, only open land stretching beneath a sky crowded with stars. The silence feels enormous. Then you hear coyotes. Their distant calls drift across the darkness, reminding you that wilderness possesses its own voice. It is not truly silent, it simply speaks differently. The men who become mountain men learn to listen. They notice subtle changes in wind direction. They recognize animal sounds. They study clouds gathering above distant ridges. Survival often depends upon observing details that others ignore. A careless traveller may overlook warning signs. A skilled trapper rarely does. Yet skill takes time. Many newcomers arrive with confidence that quickly fades. Frontier life is far more demanding than rumours suggest. Clothing wears out, equipment breaks, food supplies diminish, weather changes without warning. Cold rain becomes a constant enemy. Wet clothing steals warmth from the body. Damp blankets offer little comfort. Mud slows travel and exhausts both people and animals. A simple storm can disrupt plans for days. You begin understanding why experience matters so much. The wilderness rarely offers second chances. As the fur trade expands, organised companies send increasingly ambitious expeditions into remote territories. Their leaders hope to locate profitable trapping grounds before competitors arrive. Timing becomes critical. Whoever reaches valuable areas first often gains an advantage. Competition intensifies. Rival companies watch each other closely. Traders gather information whenever possible. Rumours about rich beaver populations spread rapidly through frontier communities. Sometimes the rumours prove true, sometimes they do not. Either way, people keep moving west. For a moment, it feels as though the entire frontier is being pulled toward distant mountains. Historical records reveal that the demand for beaver pelts remained strong throughout much of the early 19th century. Fashion trends in Europe and North America encouraged continued investment in trapping operations. The result was a sustained movement of people into previously unfamiliar regions. Economic incentives can be remarkably powerful. They persuade individuals to endure risks that might otherwise seem unreasonable. The future mountain men embody this reality. Many are not wealthy. Many come from ordinary backgrounds. The frontier offers possibilities unavailable elsewhere. A successful trapper might earn more than many labourers back east. The work is dangerous, but the rewards can be significant. For young men seeking independence, that prospect is difficult to ignore. As darkness deepens, you sit beside another campfire. The flames cast long shadows across nearby grass. Horse breath rises into cool night air. A pot hangs above glowing coals, releasing the simple aroma of a modest meal. Around the fire, stories circulate, stories always ways travel. Someone claims to have seen mountains taller than imagination. Another describes rivers crowded with beaver. A third warns about brutal winters farther west. No one knows which details are entirely accurate. Accounts differ, memories shift. Exaggeration occasionally joins the conversation. Modern historians continue debating the reliability of certain frontier stories because many accounts were written years after the events they describe. Human memory is imperfect, especially when adventure and reputation become involved. Separating fact from embellishment remains an ongoing challenge. Still, the stories matter. They inspire people. They attract dreamers. They encourage movement into lands that remain largely unfamiliar to outsiders. The frontier grows not only through geography but through imagination. You stare into the fire. Beyond the glow stretches an immense continent waiting to reveal itself. Rivers twist through hidden valleys. Snow gathers upon distant peaks. Forests conceal routes that no map yet records. Soon, the mountain men will push farther into that unknown world. Soon, they will follow waterways beyond familiar boundaries. Soon, they will begin opening pathways that later generations scarcely realize once had to be discovered. For now, though, the night remains calm. The stars shine overhead. The prairie wind moves softly through the grass. And somewhere far beyond the darkness, the first great river valleys of the American West are waiting. The river valleys gradually give way to rougher country, and before long you find yourself living much closer to the daily realities of a trapper's life. The grand stories told around distant campfires begin to fade. In their place comes routine, not an easy routine, a demanding one. The wilderness does not care about reputation. It does not care how far you travelled or how ambitious your plans may be. Every morning begins with the same question. Can you continue today? The answer depends upon preparation, judgment, and endurance. You wake before sunrise. Cold air settles across the valley floor. Moisture clings to blankets. The last embers of last night's fire glow faintly beneath a layer of grey ash. Nearby, horses shift quietly in the darkness. Your fingers feel stiff. The morning chill reaches through clothing and settles into your bones. For a few moments, nobody speaks. This exhausted silence becomes familiar. The mountain men quickly learn that survival depends upon discipline. Traps must be checked regularly. Equipment requires constant maintenance. Animals need attention. Food supplies must be monitored carefully. Neglect creates problems. Problems become dangers. Dangers become disasters. The day often begins with a walk along streams and wetlands where beavers construct dams and lodges. Water moves slowly through reeds and grasses. Mud presses beneath your boots. Tiny ripples spread across still pools. Every sign matters. A broken branch, fresh tracks, disturbed water. The experienced trapper reads these clues almost like a book. Beavers are remarkably skilled engineers. Their dams alter entire landscapes, creating ponds that support diverse ecosystems. Long before modern environmental science studied these effects, mountain men observed them directly. They had to. Their livelihood depended upon understanding animal behavior. One mainstream historical fact supported by research conducted at institutions including the University of California and Princeton University is that beavers significantly influence river systems and wetland environments. Modern ecological studies have confirmed observations that many trappers recorded generations earlier. Knowledge grows from attention. The mountain men spend years paying attention. As the morning progresses, traps are examined one by one. Sometimes they contain valuable catches, sometimes they remain empty. Success rarely arrives in predictable patterns. Patience becomes essential. So does resilience. A disappointing day cannot become an excuse to quit. The wilderness offers no salary, no guaranteed income, no reliable schedule. Every season brings uncertainty. Your mind drifts through a narrow valley where sunlight slowly reaches the forest floor. Pine trees rise above you. Their scent hangs fresh in the cool air. A distant stream murmurs over stones polished by centuries of flowing water. the beauty feels almost unreal. Then practical concerns return. Beauty alone cannot fill a stomach. Food occupies a constant place in daily life. Trappers supplement supplies through hunting, fishing, and gathering. Meals vary widely depending upon season, location, and fortune. Sometimes food is plentiful, sometimes it is not. A successful hunt might provide fresh meat for several days. At other times, meals become simple and repetitive, dried provisions, modest stews, and whatever resources the landscape offers must be enough. You learn not to waste anything. Waste is a luxury. The mountain men also become experts at maintaining equipment. Traps require repairs. Rifles need cleaning. Leather goods must be protected from excessive moisture. A small problem ignored today may become a major problem tomorrow. Wet leather causes trouble. Cold iron causes trouble. Broken tools cause trouble. The frontier rewards those who stay ahead of these problems. As afternoon arrives, the physical demands become more noticeable. Distances that appear modest on a map often require hours of difficult travel. Streams must be crossed. Hills must be climbed. Dense vegetation slows movement. Nothing comes easily. The romantic image of frontier adventure rarely captures the endless labour involved. Historical accounts from trappers frequently describe exhaustion. Many spent entire days walking through rugged terrain while carrying heavy equipment. The work demanded strength, but also persistence. Endurance often mattered more than speed. The landscape itself becomes a teacher. You begin recognizing subtle differences between valleys, forests, rivers, and grasslands. Certain areas provide better shelter. Others offer more abundant game. Some regions appear inviting until weather changes dramatically. Then their true nature emerges. A clear morning can become a stormy afternoon. A calm river can become dangerous after heavy rain. The wilderness constantly reminds people that confidence and caution must travel together. For a moment, it feels as though every decision carries weight. Where to camp, when to travel, how much food to carry, which route to follow. Each choice influences survival, yet life is not entirely hardship. Around evening campfires, companionship develops. Trappers exchange stories, share observations, and occasionally joke about the strange situations they encounter. Gentle humour becomes valuable in difficult conditions. People need laughter, even on the frontier. Perhaps especially on the frontier, you notice the smell of wood smoke drifting upward into cool evening air. Sparks rise towards the sky, slowly filling with stars. Nearby, someone carefully repairs a piece of equipment by firelight. These small moments matter. They provide comfort in an unpredictable world. Human beings have always sought connection. The mountain men are no exception. As darkness settles across the landscape, attention turns toward tomorrow. Weather conditions are considered. Routes are discussed. Supplies are reviewed. Planning never stops. The frontier punishes complacency. Many historians note that daily life for mountain men involved far more routine labour than popular legends often suggest. While dramatic adventures certainly occurred, most days were defined by practical tasks necessary for survival and economic success. Reality is often quieter than legend, yet it can be equally fascinating. The details reveal the truth. A worn pair of moccasins, a carefully maintained repaired trap, a shared meal after a long day. These ordinary experiences shaped frontier life as much as any famous expedition. Scholars continue debating the extent to which later storytelling exaggerated the independence of individual mountain men. Some researchers emphasize personal skill and self-reliance, while others stress the importance of trade networks, partnerships, and indigenous knowledge. The discussion remains active because both perspectives contain important truths. No one survives entirely alone. Not for long. The wilderness teaches cooperation as surely as it teaches independence. The fire burns lower. Night deepens around their camp. Horse breath drifts softly through the darkness. The scent of pine remains in the cool air. Above you, countless stars stretch across the sky without interruption. Tomorrow will bring more walking, more traps, More decisions, more lessons from the land, and little by little, the mountain men will continue learning how to live within a world that still feels vast, mysterious, and wonderfully beyond control. The lessons of daily survival gradually lead you toward a deeper understanding of the people who know this land best. Long before trappers arrive from distant settlements, generations of indigenous communities have travelled these valleys, crossed these rivers, and adapted to these environments. The wilderness is not unfamiliar to them. It is home. As you move farther west, this reality becomes impossible to ignore. The mountains, forests, plains, and deserts that seem mysterious to newcomers have already been studied through centuries of experience by nations whose knowledge is rooted in direct observation. The mountain men quickly discover an important truth. They have much to learn. Morning sunlight filters through cottonwood trees along a riverbank. Water glitters between branches. A cool breeze carries the scent of damp earth and fresh vegetation nearby. Horse tracks mingle with older trails that have guided travellers for generations. Many of those trails did not originate with trappers. They were already there. The mountain men often follow routes first established by indigenous travellers, traders, hunters, and communities. What appears to be exploration is frequently a process of learning pathways that others have long understood. This lesson humbles many newcomers, at least the wise ones. You begin noticing how survival knowledge extends into every aspect of daily life. Local plants serve practical purposes. Certain roots provide food. Some materials become medicine. Others help create tools, shelter, or clothing. The land contains answers, but only for those who know where to look. One mainstream historical fact supported by research from institutions including Columbia University and the University of Cambridge is that indigenous nations across North America possessed highly sophisticated environmental knowledge developed through generations of direct interaction with local ecosystems. Modern researchers increasingly recognize the depth and complexity of this expertise. The mountain men benefit from that expertise constantly. They learn new hunting methods. They learn regional geography. They learn how to identify water sources during dry periods. They learn which routes remain passable during difficult seasons. Without such guidance, many expeditions would have faced far greater hardship. Your mind drifts toward a camp beside a winding river. The smell of wood smoke mixes with the aroma of food cooking over an open fire. Nearby, conversations unfold between people from different backgrounds, languages, and traditions. The frontier is rarely simple. It is a place of exchange. Sometimes cooperation flourishes, sometimes misunderstandings emerge, sometimes tensions develop. Human relationships remain complicated regardless of geography. The mountain men enter a world shaped by existing alliances, rivalries, trade networks, and territorial boundaries. Success often depends upon understanding these realities rather than ignoring them. Those who fail to learn may encounter serious difficulties. Those who listen carefully often fare better. Practical clothing offers one example of this exchange of knowledge. Many trappers gradually adopt garments better suited to frontier conditions. Moccasins provide flexibility and comfort across varied terrain. Specialized clothing materials often perform better than garments designed for eastern settlements. Function matters more than fashion. The wilderness encourages practical decisions. You can almost feel soft leather beneath your feet as you walk along a forest trail. Pine needles cushion each step. Sunlight shifts across the ground in moving patterns. Somewhere overhead, birds call from hidden branches. Small details become important teachers. The mountain men observe constantly. How does snow accumulate in certain valleys? Which rivers flood during spring? Where do game animals travel during different seasons? Knowledge collected over time becomes invaluable, and much of that knowledge originates from people who already understand the landscape. As the seasons pass, many mountain men develop close relationships with indigenous communities. Trade partnerships emerge, friendships form, families are created, individual experiences vary widely. but cultural exchange becomes a significant feature of frontier life. The reality is more human than many legends suggest. People work together, they share information, they solve problems, they adapt. Historical records reveal numerous examples of mountain men whose survival depended upon cooperation with local communities. Diaries, trading accounts, and later recollections frequently describe assistance received during difficult circumstances. No frontier hero survives entirely through personal toughness alone. The myth is appealing, the reality is richer. Afternoon sunlight warms a broad valley surrounded by distant peaks. The air smells faintly of sagebrush. Grass ripples beneath a steady wind far away. A herd moves slowly across the landscape. The mountains seem less mysterious now, not because they have changed, because your understanding has grown. This transformation happens repeatedly throughout the history of the West. Places once viewed as unknown gradually become familiar through experience, observation, and shared knowledge. The process requires patience and humility. Humility is not always easy for ambitious people. Many mountain men arrive believing they are entering untouched wilderness. Experience often corrects that assumption. The land contains histories older than any trapper's journey. Trails carry memories. Rivers connect communities. Mountains witness generations come and go. For a reflective moment, you pause beside flowing water. The current moves steadily around stones worn smooth by time. The sound is calming, almost hypnotic. You realize that human lives are brief compared to landscapes. Yet people still leave traces. Some traces become stories. Others become pathways. Others become relationships. As evening approaches, camp life resumes its familiar rhythm. Equipment is inspected. Meals are prepared. Horses are tended. Smoke curls upward into cooling air. The smell of roasted meat drifts through camp. Someone quietly sharpens a knife. Someone else studies tomorrow's route. The ordinary details continue. They always do. Yet beneath these routines lies a growing awareness that survival depends upon more than physical strength. It depends upon learning from others, adapting to new circumstances, and respecting local knowledge. Many modern historians emphasize this point when examining frontier history. The image of the completely self-sufficient trapper has gradually given way to a more nuanced understanding of cooperation, exchange, and interconnected communities. The evidence supports that shift. The frontier was a network, not an island. Scholars continue debating the exact nature of relationships between various trapping groups and indigenous nations because experiences differed across regions and decades. No single interpretation fully captures every situation. Accounts vary, circumstances changed, and local conditions often shaped outcomes in unique ways. That complexity is part of the story. History rarely offers simple answers. Real people seldom fit neatly into categories. Night slowly settles across the valley. The last light fades from distant ridges. Cool air drifts down from the mountains. Campfires flicker against the darkness. You sit quietly for a while, listening. The river continues its steady movement. The horses breathe softly nearby. Somewhere beyond the glow of the fire, old trails disappear into the night. Tomorrow, those trails will lead deeper into the mountains, and the mountain men will continue learning from a land whose greatest lessons often arrive through the people who know it best. The trails lead steadily upward, and before long the mountains themselves begin to dominate every horizon. The valleys narrow, rivers run colder, forests thicken along steep slopes. The easy movement of layer country gives way to a landscape that demands greater effort with every mile. Winter is coming in the Rocky Mountains. That simple fact influences almost everything. The mountain men understand this well. A mistake during summer may be inconvenient. A mistake during winter can become life-threatening. As autumn fades, preparations become increasingly urgent. Time suddenly feels precious. You notice the first signs everywhere. Morning frost lingers longer on the grass. Thin ice forms along quiet edges of streams. The air carries a sharper bite. Migrating birds move across the sky in shifting formations, the mountains are sending warnings. Wise travelers pay attention. Your horse exhales a cloud of white vapor during the early hours of dawn. Leather reins feel cold against your fingers. Beneath your boots, frozen ground crunches softly with each step. The season is changing. Soon the world will look entirely different. For the mountain men, winter represents both challenge and opportunity. Beaver pelts often reach their finest condition during colder months. Yet obtaining those pelts requires enduring some of the harshest environments in North America. The rewards increase. So do the risks. One mainstream historical fact supported by research conducted at institutions such as the University of Oxford and Stanford University is that winter conditions in the Rocky Mountains historically created severe obstacles for travel and survival. Heavy snowfall, extreme temperatures, and geographic isolation regularly shaped the experiences of both indigenous communities and frontier travelers. The mountains do not negotiate, they simply exist. Snow begins arriving in higher elevations long before it reaches lower valleys. At first, only a light covering appears on distant peaks. Then the white line gradually descends. Day by day, week by week, eventually entire landscapes disappear beneath snow. You find yourself walking through a forest transformed by winter. Pine branches bend under fresh accumulation. The usual sounds of flowing water become muted. Even the air seems quieter. Snow changes everything. Travel becomes slower. Navigation becomes harder. Energy disappears more quickly. A route that required a few hours during summer may consume an entire day during winter. Deep drifts hide obstacles. Ice turns ordinary crossings into dangerous challenges. The mountain men learn to conserve strength. Every unnecessary movement wastes precious energy. Every decision matters. Camp selection becomes especially important. Shelter from wind can mean the difference between relative comfort and dangerous exposure. Experienced trappers search carefully for protected locations near fuel and water. The ideal campsite is never chosen casually. Not in winter. You can almost smell wood smoke spreading through crisp evening air. Nearby, an axe strikes frozen timber with a sharp echo. The sound carries across the valley before fading into silence. The work never ends. Firewood must be gathered. Shelter must be maintained. Water must be obtained. Meals must be prepared. Winter creates additional responsibilities while simultaneously making each task more difficult. Yet moments of extraordinary beauty appear as well. Morning sunlight reflects from fresh snow, illuminating entire valleys with brilliant light. Frozen rivers sparkle beneath clear skies. Mountain peaks seem almost impossibly sharp against the horizon. The wilderness feels transformed, cold but magnificent. Your mind drifts toward a narrow mountain pass. Snowflakes move lazily through still air. A distant ridge glows gold beneath the first light of sunrise. The landscape appears peaceful. Appearances can be deceptive. Winter weather changes rapidly. A calm morning may become a fierce storm by afternoon. Wind accelerates through narrow passes. Visibility disappears. Familiar landmarks vanish behind blowing snow. Experienced mountain men respect these dangers. Those who underestimate them often regret it. Historical accounts describe winters that tested even the most capable frontiersmen. Food shortages occurred. Horses were lost, equipment failed. Travel plans collapsed beneath severe weather conditions. Nature held the advantage. It usually did. The mountain men responded through adaptability. They adjusted routes, modified schedules, and sometimes remained in sheltered locations for extended periods while waiting for conditions to improve. Patience became a survival skill, not merely a virtue, a necessity. Food also becomes a greater concern during winter months. Hunting opportunities fluctuate. Animal movements change. Deep snow complicates travel. Every available resource gains importance. Nothing's taken for granted. A successful hunt brings relief. A failed one brings concern. You notice the smell of stew simmering slowly above a campfire. Steam rises into cold air. Frozen fingers gradually regain warmth near glowing coals. These simple comforts become deeply meaningful during long winters. Human beings appreciate warmth differently when surrounded by snow. The mountain men certainly do. The emotional experience of winter deserves attention as well. Long periods of isolation affect even resilient individuals. Snowstorms can confine travelers for days. Familiar routines become repetitive. Distances between camps seem greater. Loneliness occasionally settles in, quietly, unexpectedly. A person may sit beside a fire while wind rattles shelter walls and wonder about distant family members. Thoughts drift toward old friends, former homes, and futures that remain uncertain. The frontier is not only a physical challenge, it is an emotional one. For a reflective pause, you stare into dancing flames while darkness fills the valley beyond. The fire crackles softly. Snowflakes drift through the edge of the light. Somewhere in the distance, a branch breaks beneath accumulated snow. Then silence returns. Deep silence. The kind found only in remote winter landscapes. Many historians note that surviving Rocky Mountain winters required extensive practical knowledge. Shelter construction, clothing maintenance, food preservation, navigation, and environmental awareness all played essential roles. Skill mattered greatly. Experience mattered more. Scholars continue debating the precise severity of particular historical winters because surviving records sometimes differ in their description. Personal memories, regional variations, and limited documentation create uncertainty in some cases. However, there is broad agreement that winter posed one of the greatest challenges faced by mountain men. On that point, little disagreement remains. The evidence is clear. Winter demanded respect as the night grows colder. You pull a blanket closer around your shoulders. Wood smoke lingers in the air. The scent of pine mixes with the clean smell of snow. Above the mountains, countless stars merge. They seem brighter here, closer somehow. Tomorrow will bring more snow-covered trails, frozen rivers, and difficult choices. Yet it will also bring another day of learning how to live within one of the most demanding environments on the continent. The mountains remain vast, the winter remains long, and the mountain men continue adapting to both. Winter eventually loosens its grip. Snow retreats from lower valleys, streams swell with melting ice, grass returns to the hillsides. Across the mountains and river systems of the West, life begins moving again. The beavers move too, and wherever the beavers go, the mountain men follow. By now, you have spent enough time on the frontier to understand that fur is not merely a trade commodity. It is the engine powering an entire economic world. Trappers, merchants, boatmen, craftsmen, investors, and trading companies all depend upon the steady flow of pelts moving eastward. The wilderness has become a marketplace, a very large one. As spring sunlight warms the valleys, activity increases across the trapping grounds. Streams once sealed by ice now flow freely. Travel becomes easier. Camps that remained isolated through winter reconnect with broader trading networks. Movement out returns. Opportunity returns. Competition returns. The mountain men know that every season matters. Beaver populations are scattered across immense territories. Finding productive trapping locations requires knowledge, patience, and sometimes a little luck. You follow a winding stream through a broad meadow. The air smells fresh and clean after recent rain. Wildflowers begin appearing along the riverbank. Water birds glide across quiet ponds formed by beaver dams. The landscape seems alive because it is. One mainstream historical fact supported by research from institutions including Yale University and the University of Cambridge is that beaver populations once existed in extraordinary numbers throughout much of North America. Historical estimates suggest that before intensive trapping, tens of millions of beavers inhabited rivers, streams, and wetlands across the continent. To a fur trader, that abundance represents wealth, enormous wealth. Every successful trapper understands the value of a productive watershed. A valley rich with beaver activity can provide significant returns. Signs of recent construction, fresh-cut branches, and active lodges attract immediate attention. Observation becomes profit. Profit encourages exploration, and exploration pushes the frontier farther west. As you travel through this world, you begin noticing how deeply economic shapes daily decisions. The mountain men often appear independent, yet they operate within a larger commercial system. Pelts must eventually reach markets, supplies must be purchased, credit must be extended and repaid. Freedom exists, but so do obligation. Many trappers depended upon trading companies for equipment and provisions. In exchange, they promise future pelts. This arrangement allows expeditions to continue, but it also creates financial pressure. A poor trapping season can have serious consequences. Success brings opportunity. Failure brings debt. The frontier can be unforgiving in both nature and business. Your mind drifts toward a remote trading post beside a river. Wooden buildings stand against a backdrop of distant hills. Smoke rises from chimneys. Horses wait near corrals. Canoes and supply boats line the shore. The post feels busy. Voices fill the air. Goods change hands. News travels quickly. These locations serve as important hubs within the fur trade network. Trappers exchange pelts for supplies. Merchants gather information about conditions farther west. Travelers learn which routes remain open and which regions show promise. Information becomes valuable, sometimes nearly as valuable as fur itself. A rumor about rich trapping grounds can influence hundreds of miles of travel. A warning about poor conditions can save lives. The mountain men become part explorer, part laborer, and part businessman. Their success depends not only upon trapping skill, but also upon judgment. Where should they go? When should they move? Which opportunities deserve pursuit? No one always chooses correctly, yet the search continues. The global demand for beaver felt hats remained strong during this period. Fashion trends in Europe and North America helped sustain prices. People living thousands of miles away influenced decisions made beside remote western rivers. It is an unexpected connection. A fashionable gentleman in a distant city never imagined the rugged valleys where his hat begins its journey. Yet the connection exists. The frontier and the marketplace are linked. Historical records from merchants and trading companies reveal how extensive these commercial networks became. Goods crossed continents and oceans. Pelts traveled from remote streams to major manufacturing centers before eventually reaching consumers. The distances are astonishing. So are the logistics. You pause beside a river during late afternoon. Sunlight glitters across moving water. A gentle breeze carries the scent of cottonwood leaves. Nearby, a beaver slips quietly beneath the surface. For a moment, the animal disappears, then only ripples remain. Simple scenes like this help explain why the trade flourished for so long. The resource appeared abundant. The demand seemed endless. Few people imagined how dramatically conditions would eventually change. For now, optimism dominates. The frontier still feels full of possibilities. Many mountain men believe new trapping grounds will always exist farther west. New rivers, new valleys, new opportunities. The horizon constantly invites movement. As evening approaches, camp life resumes its familiar rhythm. Traps are inspected. Equipment is repaired. Meals are prepared beside open fires. The smell of roasting meat drifts through camp. Someone cleans a rifle. Someone studies a rough map. Someone quietly calculates potential profits. Economic ambition and daily survival exist side by side. Neither can be ignored. The emotional atmosphere of these camps varies. Some trappers dream of wealth and future comfort. Others care little for money beyond immediate needs. Many simply enjoy the independence that frontier life provides. Different goals, shared hardships, shared landscapes, shared stories. For a reflective moment, you sit beside the fire and watch sparks rise into the evening sky. The mountains stand dark against fading light. A river murmurs somewhere beyond camp. The wilderness feels immense, yet human activity is steadily reshaping it. Not through cities or farms, not yet. Through trade, through movement, through countless small decisions repeated across thousands of miles. Historians generally agree that the fur trade played a central role in expanding geographic knowledge of the American West. At the same time, scholars continue debating the long-term and environmental impact of intensive beaver trapping. While there is broad consensus that our populations declined significantly in many regions, discussions continue regarding the precise scale and timing of those changes. The debate reflects a larger truth. History rarely follows a simple path. Economic success often creates unforeseen consequences. The mountain men do not yet know how dramatically the future will transform their world. For now, the trade remains strong, the rivers remain busy, the beavers remain valuable, and across the vast western wilderness, thousands of miles of streams and valleys continue drawing ambitious trappers ever deeper into the unknown. The streams and valleys continue drawing trappers across the West, but eventually even the most isolated mountain men need supplies, news, and human company. Months of scattered trapping create a practical problem. Pelts accumulate. Equipment wears out, ammunition runs low, horses require replacement. The wilderness provides many things. A trading post provides others. Out of this reality emerges one of the most remarkable traditions of the fur trade era, the rendezvous. As summer settles across the mountains, word spreads through river valleys and trapping grounds. Trappers begin altering their routes. Small groups converge from different directions. Traders prepare supply trains, interpreters, laborers, and merchants organize goods for transport. Everyone is heading toward the same destination, at least for a little while. The rendezvous serves as a temporary marketplace, meeting ground and social gathering, instead of requiring trappers to carry pelts all the way back east. Trading companies bring supplies directly into the mountains. The system changes everything. Distance becomes less of a barrier. Business becomes more efficient. The frontier becomes more connected. You ride through a broad valley beneath clear summer skies. Grass sways gently in the wind. Mountain peaks rise in the distance. Ahead, signs of activity become increasingly visible. More horses, more camps, more travelers. The quiet isolation of winter feels very far away. One mainstream historical fact supported by research from institutions such as Harvard University and the University of Oxford is that the rendezvous system became a defining feature of the Rocky Mountain fur trade during the early 19th century. These annual gatherings allowed trappers and traders to exchange goods, information, and pelts without requiring lengthy returns to eastern settlements. The idea proves remarkably successful. Soon, rendezvous gatherings become legendary. Your mind drifts toward the edge of a large encampment. Smoke rises from dozens of fires. Horses graze nearby. Voices carry through warm evening air. The smell of cooking food mixes with the scent of leather, wood smoke, and sun-warmed grass. The scene feels alive. After months of isolation, the sudden concentration of people creates a powerful contrast. Mountain men arrive with stories. Merchants arrive with goods. Everyone arrives with expectations. For many trappers, the rendezvous represents more than commerce. It offers a rare chance to reconnect with friends scattered across enormous distances. Familiar faces appear unexpectedly. News from distant regions circulates rapidly. Conversations continue late into the night. There is much to discuss. Routes discovered, weather endured, opportunities found, dangers survived. The exchange of information becomes nearly as important as the exchange of goods. Knowledge remains valuable currency. A trapper may learn about productive new territories. A merchant may hear reports about changing market conditions. Travelers gather intelligence that influences future decisions. The frontier communicates through people, and rendezvous gatherings amplify that communication. You walk through rows of temporary camps. Bright sunlight reflects from metal tools displayed for trade. Horses stamp impatiently beside picket lines. Wagons carry supplies transported across astonishing distances. The inventory is impressive. Rifles, powder, blankets, cooking equipment, clothing, tools, everything necessary for another year in the wilderness. The mountain men examine these goods carefully. Every purchase matters. Supplies must survive demanding conditions. Poor quality equipment can create serious problems far from assistance. Practical judgment remains essential, even during celebration. Historical records describe rendezvous events as vibrant and sometimes chaotic occasions. Contemporary accounts mention trading, storytelling, recreation, and the renewal of social connections. After long periods of isolation, many participants welcomed opportunities for companionship. Human beings are social creatures. Even the most independent trapper eventually appreciates conversation. You notice laughter drifting from a nearby group. Someone retells a hunting story. Another listener challenges certain details. Friendly disagreement follows. The audience seems entertained. Truth and exaggeration occasionally travel together on the frontier.
Perhaps they always have.
As afternoon fades toward evening, the atmosphere changes slightly. Business continues, but relaxation becomes more visible. Meals are shared. Music occasionally appears. Travelers exchange experiences gathered across thousands of miles. For a brief time, the frontier feels smaller, more connected, less lonely. Yet beneath the celebration remains a serious purpose. Pelts are traded, accounts are settled, supplies are secured. Economic reality never disappears completely. The fur trade remains a business, a demanding one. The rendezvous simply gives that business a human face. For a reflective moment, you stand on a hillside overlooking the gathering. Campfires begin appearing across the valley floor. Smoke rises into cooling air. Horses graze quietly near the edge of camp. The scale is striking. People who spent months separated by mountains, rivers, and wilderness now occupy the same landscape. Then, eventually, they will separate again. The gathering is temporary. The frontier is permanent. Many mountain men understand this balance. They enjoy the companionship while it lasts, knowing that isolation will soon return. New trapping seasons await. New territories beckon. New challenges remain ahead. The rhythm becomes familiar. Gather, trade, reconnect, depart, repeat. Your thoughts drift toward a fire where several trappers discuss distant mountain passes. Someone describes a route through difficult terrain. Another argues for a different path. Maps are scarce, so experience becomes the most trusted guide. These conversations matter. Information exchanged beside campfires may influence future exploration. Routes discussed today could become important trails tomorrow. In this way, rendezvous gatherings contribute to the broader opening of the American West. Knowledge spreads, geographic understanding expands. Connections strengthen across regions that once seemed isolated from one another. The impact extends beyond commerce. It reaches into exploration itself. Historians generally agree on the importance of rendezvous gatherings within the fur trade economy. Scholars continue debating the precise social and cultural influence of these events because experiences varied among participants and regions. Some researchers emphasize commercial functions, while others highlight the role of community building and information exchange. Both perspectives reveal important aspects of the story. The frontier rarely serves a single purpose. It is simultaneously economic, social, and geographic. As darkness settles over the valley, countless campfires flicker beneath the stars. The smell of wood smoke drifts through cool night air. Distant voices rise and fall in conversation. Tomorrow, business will continue. Soon departures will begin. The mountain men will once again scatter across rivers, forests, and mountains. But tonight, for a little while, they share the same sky, the same stories, and the same remarkable gathering deep within the heart of the American West. The campfires of the rendezvous gradually fade behind you, and once again the wilderness stretches in every direction. Supplies have been replenished, news has been exchanged, plans have been made. Now the journey continues, but something has changed. The mountain men are no longer simply following rivers and trapping beaver. Increasingly, they are discovering routes through landscapes that remain unfamiliar to much of the United States. Without fully realizing it, they are becoming pathfinders. The west is still immense. Mountains rise like walls across the horizon. Rivers twist through deep canyons. Deserts spread beneath endless skies. Yet every season adds new pieces to a growing understanding of the continent. Knowledge accumulates slowly, one valley at a time, one river at a time, one trail at... You ride westward beneath a bright morning sky. Horse hooves strike firm ground. Cool air flows down from distant mountains. A hawk circles high above a broad valley. The land feels open, almost limitless. Yet hidden within that vastness are practical routes that determine whether travellers can move safely through difficult terrain. Finding those routes becomes one of the mountain men's greatest contributions. A mountain range may appear impassable from a distance. Then someone discovers a pass. A river may seem impossible to cross. Then someone identifies a suitable ford. A valley may provide a natural corridor connecting distant regions. Small discoveries create major consequences. Future generations will depend upon them. One mainstream historical fact supported by research from institutions including Yale University and the University of California is that mountain men and fur trade explorers contributed significantly to the mapping and geographic understanding of the American West. Their observations helped reveal practical routes later used by settlers, traders, soldiers and surveyors, and the importance of this work cannot be measured only in miles travelled. It must also be measured in possibilities created. Your mind drifts toward a narrow mountain pass. Jagged peaks rise on either side. Wind carries the scent of stone and pine. Snow lingers in shaded areas despite the warmth of summer. The route is difficult, but it exists, and that changes everything for travellers approaching these mountains in the future. The difference between an unknown barrier and a known passage could determine the success of an entire journey. The mountain men learn these routes through direct experience. They do not possess detailed guidebooks. They do not consult comprehensive maps. They learn by travelling, by observing, by remembering, sometimes by making mistakes. The frontier remains an unforgiving teacher. A wrong turn can add days to a journey. A poor campsite can create unnecessary hardship. A misunderstanding of local geography can place travellers in danger. Experience becomes priceless. And experienced guides become highly valued. You begin noticing how carefully successful mountain men study the landscape. They observe water sources. They note seasonal conditions. They remember landmarks. They pay attention to the shape of valleys and the direction of rivers. The land becomes familiar through repetition, not all at once, gradually. A ridge that once seemed confusing becomes recognizable. A river bend becomes a useful reference point. A distant peak becomes a trusted landmark. Knowledge turns wilderness into geography. The distinction matters. As afternoon sunlight spreads across rolling foothills, you follow a route that winds between forested slopes. The smell of warm pine fills the air. Insects hum among patches of wildflowers. A clear stream crosses your path. Everything appears peaceful, yet every mile travelled adds to a growing body of practical information. The mountain men are building mental maps. Those maps will eventually influence written ones. Historical records reveal that many early Western maps improved through information gathered by trappers, traders, guides, and explorers. Geographic knowledge often emerged through countless observations made over many years, rather than through a single dramatic expedition. The process was cumulative, patient, collaborative. No single individual discovered the entire West. Many people contributed. That reality is important. The popular image of the lone explorer uncovering vast territories often oversimplifies history. In practice, knowledge moved through networks of travellers, indigenous communities, traders, and guides. Information was shared, refined, corrected, expanded. The frontier operated through cooperation as much as individual effort. For a moment, it feels as though every trail contains layers of memory. Someone travelled here before, someone noticed the river crossing, someone identified the safest route through the hills. The mountain men inherit knowledge, then add to it, then pass it forward. Your thoughts settle beside a river where several travellers pause to rest. Horses drink from the water. Wet leather saddles release a familiar scent beneath the afternoon sun. Nearby, a map is unfolded and studied carefully. Maps remain imperfect, but they are improving. Each season reduces uncertainty. Each journey fills another blank space. The emotional significance of this work is easy to overlook. The mountain men rarely know how important their observations will become. Most are focused on immediate concerns: food, weather, supplies, profit. Yet history often works this way. People pursue one goal while unintentionally creating another outcome. The search for beaver helps open routes across the continent. The pursuit of commerce encourages exploration. The frontier reveals itself through practical necessity. As evening approaches, long shadows stretch across the valley floor. The air cools noticeably. Camp is established near a small grove of trees beside flowing water. Routine returns. A fire is built. Equipment is inspected. Tomorrow's route is considered. The ordinary tasks continue. They always do. Yet the landscape now feels different. Familiarity is slowly replacing mystery. Not because the wilderness has become smaller, but because human understanding has grown. The mountains still tower above you. The rivers still flow beyond sight. The distances remain immense, but pathways now connect these places. That changes history. Many historians agree that the routes identified during the fur trade era later influenced major migration corridors across the West. At the same time, scholars continue debating the relative contributions of different groups involved in this process. Indigenous knowledge, commercial exploration, government surveys, and later emigrant experiences all played important roles. The discussion reflects the complexity of frontier history. Few developments result from a single cause. Few achievements belong to a single person. As darkness settles across the camp, the sound of flowing water becomes more noticeable. Stars begin appearing overhead. A cool breeze moves through nearby trees. You sit quietly beside the fire, watching sparks rise into the night. Beyond the glow of the flames, countless trails continue through valleys and mountain passes. Some are already known. Others remain undiscovered, for now. But the mountain men keep moving, and with every season, the map of the American West becomes a little clearer. As the trails become more familiar and the maps grow more detailed, certain names begin circulating through the camps, trading posts, and rendezvous gatherings of the frontier. Stories travel remarkably fast in the mountains, especially stories about unusual people. Every generation produces individuals whose experiences seem larger than life. The mountain man era is no exception. Among the many trappers, guides, and explorers moving across the West, a few figures become especially famous. Two names appear again and again: Jedediah Smith, Jim Bridger. Their lives help illuminate both the possibilities and realities of the frontier. Yet before you imagine them as legends, it is worth remembering something important. They began as ordinary men. The wilderness shaped what came afterward. You ride through a broad valley beneath a sky washed clean by recent rain. Snow-capped peaks rise in the distance. The scent of wet grass drifts through the cool air. Somewhere ahead, a river glitters in the afternoon sunlight. This is the world they knew, not the world of myths, the real one. One mainstream historical fact supported by research from institutions such as Harvard University and Stanford University is that figures like Jedediah Smith and Jim Bridger played significant roles in expanding American knowledge of Western geography during the early 19th century. Their travels contributed valuable information about routes, rivers, mountain passes, and regional conditions. Yet geography tells only part of the story. The human dimension matters too. Jedediah Smith stands out even among his fellow mountain men. Contemporary descriptions often portray him as disciplined, thoughtful, and deeply determined. He spends years traveling through regions unfamiliar to many Americans. The distances are astonishing. The risks are real. Smith repeatedly ventures into difficult territory where reliable information remains scarce. He crosses deserts, mountains, and river systems that challenge even experienced travelers. Your mind drifts toward a lonely trail winding through rugged country. Dry wind carries the scent of sagebrush. Dust rises beneath careful footsteps. The horizon seems impossibly far away. It's easy to understand why such journeys attract attention. Few people attempt them. Fewer still succeed repeatedly. Historical accounts describe Smith surviving extraordinary hardships. At one point, he endures a severe encounter with a bear that leaves lasting injuries. Yet he continues traveling afterward. The story becomes famous. For understandable reasons, the frontier demands resilience. Smith possesses plenty of it. Still, his importance extends beyond dramatic survival stories. His explorations help reveal practical information about Western regions. Routes identified during his travels later influence movement across the continent. The mountains remember footsteps long after the traveler's gone. Jim Bridger follows a somewhat different path. He becomes renowned for his extensive knowledge of Western geography and his remarkable ability to navigate unfamiliar environments. Over time, he develops a reputation as one of the most experienced guides in the West. People seek his advice, for good reason. Bridger spends decades learning the landscape. Valleys, rivers, passes, deserts. His knowledge becomes so extensive that later travelers frequently rely upon his guidance. You can almost picture him studying distant ridges beneath a bright sky. Wind moves through tall grass. A river bends through the valley below. Every feature of the landscape contains information. Experienced eyes recognize it. Others may not. The frontier rewards observation. Bridger excels at it. As his reputation grows, stories about him spread across the West. Some accounts are entirely accurate, others become exaggerated through repetition. This happens frequently on the frontier, where storytelling serves both entertainment and communication. Facts travel, so do embellishments, sometimes together. Many mountain men acquire colourful reputations because their experiences genuinely are unusual. Living for years in remote wilderness produces stories that sound almost unbelievable to people living in settled towns. Yet reality often provides enough drama without invention. A winter storm in the Rockies, a dangerous river crossing, months of isolation, a narrow escape from starvation. These experiences require no exaggeration. For a reflective moment, you pause beside a mountain stream. Cold water rushes over smooth stones. Pine trees sway gently in the breeze. The air smells clean and fresh. It becomes easier to understand why certain individuals gain respect. The environment itself is demanding. Anyone who consistently succeeds here earns admiration. The mountain men judge one another largely through competence. Can a person navigate difficult terrain? Can he locate water during dry periods? Can he remain calm during emergencies? Practical skill matters. Reputation follows skill, at least most of the time. Historical records reveal that many frontier figures balanced exploration, trapping, guiding, trading, and diplomacy throughout their careers. Their lives rarely fit into simple categories. The frontier encourages versatility. A trapper may become a guide may become a trader may become an explorer. Adaptability often determines success. The stories of Smith and Bridger also reveal how quickly the West is changing. Their careers span a period when vast regions move from relative obscurity into growing national awareness. Information spreads faster. Maps improve. Interest increases. The frontier gradually becomes less mysterious. Ironically, the very people helping reveal the West are also contributing to changes that will eventually transform their way of life. Few recognize the full implications at first. History often hides its future consequences. As evening settles across the mountains, shadows stretch along the valley floor. The temperature drops noticeably. Campfires begin appearing among scattered camps. The familiar smell of wood smoke return. It always seems to return. Nearby, Travellers exchange stories gathered from distant regions. Some accounts concern geography, others involve unusual encounters or difficult journeys. The names Smith and Bridger appear frequently, not because they are the only important mountain men, because they represent something larger. They embody the spirit of exploration that defines the era. Yet modern historians are careful when discussing frontier legends. Scholars continue debating specific details within certain stories because contemporary records are sometimes incomplete or contradictory. Memories recorded years later do not always align perfectly with earlier evidence. This uncertainty is normal. History is rarely a perfect record. Some witnesses remember differently. Some stories change through repetition. No clear agreement survives in every case. Still, broad consensus remains regarding the importance of these men as explorers, guides, and contributors to Western geographic knowledge. Their impact is difficult to dismiss. The evidence is substantial. Night settles fully across the landscape. Stars emerge above dark mountain ridges. A nearby stream continues its steady movement through the valley. You sit beside the fire and watch the flames dance. Somewhere beyond the darkness lie the routes that Smith travelled. Somewhere beyond the darkness lie the valleys Bridger knew so well. Their journeys are part of a much larger story. A story so still said, past the storm soul unfolding. A story of exploration, endurance, and discovery across one of the most remarkable landscapes on Earth. And tomorrow, the trail will continue deeper into that world. The trail continues beyond famous names and celebrated journeys, carrying you into a world where danger remains a constant companion. Not always dramatic, not always visible, but always present. The mountain men live close to risk in ways that most people never experience. Every river crossing, every mountain pass, every winter camp contains uncertainties that cannot be completely controlled. The frontier rewards courage. Yet it also rewards caution. The wisest mountain men learn to balance both. Morning arrives beneath a sky of pale blue. A cool wind moves through a narrow valley. Frost still clings to patches of grass beside a stream. Nearby, horses lower their heads to drink from clear water. The scene appears peaceful, almost gentle, but appearances can deceive. Many of the greatest dangers on the frontier arrive without warning. A horse steps into a hidden hole. A river current proves stronger than expected. A sudden storm traps travelers far from shelter. Small events can create enormous consequences. The wilderness rarely offers guarantees. One mainstream historical fact supported by research from institutions such as Princeton University and the University of Chicago is that accidental injuries and environmental hazards represented some of the most significant threats faced by frontier travelers. Historical records often reveal that ordinary accidents could be as dangerous as any dramatic confrontation. This reality surprises modern audiences. Stories often focus on extraordinary events. Daily risks receive less attention, yet daily risks shape frontier life. You follow a rocky trail climbing gradually into higher country. Loose stones shift beneath each step. The scent of pine drifts through cool mountain air. Far below, a river winds through the valley like a silver ribbon. The landscape is beautiful and unforgiving. A misplaced step on steep terrain can result in serious injury. Broken bones become especially dangerous when professional medical care is weeks or even months away. The mountain men know this. Every experienced traveller does. Prevention becomes essential. Your mind drifts toward a river swollen by recent rain. Brown water rushes between steep banks. Fallen branches spin within the current. The crossing looks difficult, because it is. Rivers rank among the most persistent dangers of the frontier. Conditions change rapidly. Water levels rise unexpectedly. Strong currents sweep away people, animals, and equipment. A successful crossing brings relief. A failed one can bring tragedy. Many frontier journals contain descriptions of dangerous waterways. Some crossings succeed through careful planning, others become memorable for less pleasant reasons. Water demands respect. Always. The animal world presents additional challenges. Mountain lions, wolves, and bears inhabit many western regions. Encounters occur with varying frequency depending on location and circumstance. Most wildlife avoids humans, but not always. A startled animal may react unpredictably. A hungry animal may take risks. A wounded animal may become especially dangerous. Among all frontier animals, bears occupy a unique place in mountain man stories. Their size, strength, and unpredictability inspire both caution and respect. You imagine moving quietly through dense forest. Pine needles soften your footsteps. Sunlight filters through the branches overhead. The air smells of damp earth and resin. Then you notice movement, large movement. Every instinct becomes alert. The encounter may end peacefully, or it may not. Experienced mountain men understand that awareness often prevents trouble. Observing tracks, recognizing signs, and avoiding unnecessary surprises reduces risk considerably. Knowledge remains one of the most valuable tools on the frontier, perhaps the most valuable. Yet nature is not the only source of danger. Illness presents challenges that can be difficult to predict or manage. Minor infections occasionally become serious. Simple injuries sometimes worsen. Nutritional problems emerge during difficult seasons. The human body has limits. The frontier frequently tests them. Historical accounts reveal numerous examples of travelers struggling with sickness far from assistance. Recovery often depends upon rest, good fortune, and available resources. Not every challenge can be solved through determination alone. Some require patience. Others require luck. As afternoon sunlight warms the valley, you pause beside a stand of cottonwood trees. Their leaves rustle softly in the breeze. Insects hum near the water's edge. Everything seems calm again. The frontier often alternates between beauty and danger, sometimes within the same hour. This contrast shapes the emotional experience of mountain life. A person may spend the morning admiring spectacular scenery and the afternoon confronting a serious problem. Adaptability becomes essential. Rigid expectations rarely survive. The mountain men learn to adjust constantly. For a reflective moment, you sit beside a river and watch water flow around smooth stones. The sound is soothing, almost timeless. Yet even here uncertainty remains. A storm may be forming beyond the mountains. A trail ahead may be blocked. Supplies may run lower than expected. The future remains unwritten. That uncertainty creates tension, but it also creates possibility. Many mountain men accept risk because they value freedom, opportunity, or exploration. They understand the dangers. They simply decide that the rewards justify them. Not everyone would make the same choice. They do. As evening approaches, camp is established beside a sheltered grove. Wood smoke rises into cooling air. The smell of a simple meal drifts across the campsite. Horses graze nearby. The familiar routine returns. Fire, food, rest, preparation. These ordinary activities help manage extraordinary circumstances. The frontier is survived one day at a time. Many historians emphasize that the greatest threats to mountain men often came from environmental conditions rather than dramatic encounters. Exposure, accidents, illness, and logistical challenges appear repeatedly throughout surviving records. The evidence is remarkably consistent. Nature usually held the advantage. Scholars continue debating the precise frequency of certain famous frontier dangers because popular stories sometimes exaggerate rare events. Dramatic encounters naturally attract attention, while routine hardships receive less notice. Separating legend from everyday reality remains an ongoing challenge for historians. Yet both are part of the story. The legends reveal imagination. The realities reveal endurance. Night settles gradually across the valley. Stars appear above dark ridges. A cool breeze carries the scent of pine and wood smoke. You sit quietly beside the fire, listening to the crackle of burning wood. Beyond the circle of light, the wilderness stretches outward into darkness. Rivers continue flowing, animals continue moving, weather continues changing. The dangers remain, so do the opportunities, and the mountain men continue forward, knowing that every horizon conceals both risk and discovery. The dangers never disappear, but neither does the pull of the horizon. Beyond every river lies another valley. Beyond every valley rises another ridge. And beyond many of those ridges stands one of the greatest geographic barriers in North America, the Continental Divide. For generations, this immense mountain spine shapes the movement of water, wildlife, people, and ideas. Rain falling on one side eventually reaches the Atlantic Ocean. Rain falling on the other side begins a journey toward the Pacific. The divide is more than a geographic feature. It is a threshold. Crossing it changes how travelers understand the continent. You begin climbing toward higher elevations beneath a bright summer sky. The air feels thinner. Pine forests spread across steep slopes. Snow remains visible on distant peaks even though the valleys below are warm. The mountains seem endless, layer after layer, ridge after ridge. The scale is difficult to comprehend. Mountain men approaching these heights quickly learn that maps rarely capture the true complexity of Western terrain. Distances appear manageable on paper. Reality tells a different story. Reality usually does, as still does. A narrow canyon can delay travel for days. A steep slope can exhaust both people and horses. A sudden storm can erase carefully made plans. Patience becomes essential. So does determination. One mainstream historical fact supported by research from institutions including Columbia University and the University of Oxford is that mountain men played an important role in identifying practical routes across portions of the Rocky Mountains, including passes later used by emigrants, traders, and government expeditions. These discoveries carry enormous consequences, not always immediately, but eventually. A mountain pass may seem significant only to a handful of trappers when first identified. Years later, that same route may guide thousands of travelers moving westward. History often works quietly at first. Its full impact emerges later. You follow a winding trail through alpine country. Wildflowers grow between rocks. Cold streams rush downhill from melting snowfields. The air carries the scent of stone, pine, and clean water. Everything feels sharper here. The light, the wind, the silence. Even breathing requires more effort. The mountain men adapt through experience. They learn which passes remain accessible during different seasons. They discover where snow lingers longest. They identify reliable water sources and sheltered campsites. Knowledge accumulates gradually. The mountains reveal their secrets slowly. Many routes prove disappointing. Some appear promising before ending abruptly in cliffs or impassable terrain. Others become trapped by the deeper snow. A few lead to success. Finding those successful routes requires persistence, and sometimes luck. Your mind drifts toward a narrow saddle between towering peaks. Wind whistles across exposed rock. Clouds cast moving shadows over distant valleys. Below, rivers spread across landscapes stretching far beyond sight. The view feels enormous, almost overwhelming. For travelers reaching these heights, the continent begins to reveal its true scale. The American West is not simply large, it is vast. The mountain men are among the first non-indigenous travelers to gain detailed familiarity with many of these regions. Their observations gradually transform blank spaces on maps into recognizable geography. Valleys receive names. Passes become known. Rivers are traced. Connection emerge. The unknown becomes slightly less unknown. Historical records describe how experienced guides often became invaluable during difficult crossings. Knowledge of local terrain could save weeks of travel and prevent costly mistakes. The frontier rewards expertise, especially geographic expertise. A person who knows the mountains possesses something extremely valuable. Not gold, not fur, knowledge. You pause beside a cold stream flowing through a meadow high above the valleys below. Water glides over smooth stones polished by centuries of movement. Tiny wildflowers sway in the breeze. The scene feels peaceful, yet reaching it required tremendous effort. That effort shapes the mountain men themselves. Years spent navigating difficult terrain develop confidence. observation skills, and resilience. The mountains become both workplace and teacher, not always a gentle teacher, but an effective one. The emotional experience of crossing major mountain barriers deserves attention. Imagine spending weeks climbing through increasingly rugged country. Every day presents uncertainty. Every ridge promises answers. Then suddenly the landscape changes. New valleys appear. New rivers flow in unfamiliar direction. A different world unfolds beyond the mountains. The moment carries significance, even for experienced travellers, for a reflective pause. You stand on a high ridge and watch sunlight move across distant ranges. Wind brushes against your face. The air feels cool despite the bright day. The horizon seems endless. You realize that geography shapes human history more than people often notice. Mountains guide movement. Rivers encourage settlement. Passes create opportunity. Barriers influence decisions. The mountain men spend their lives learning these lessons firsthand. As afternoon progresses, the journey continues through challenging terrain. Loose rock shifts beneath boots. Horses move carefully along narrow paths. The smell of sun-warmed stone mixes with the scent of alpine vegetation. Progress is steady, but never easy. The mountains insist upon effort. That effort eventually produces rewards. Better routes become known. Travel times improve. Geographic understanding expands. Future generations benefit from experiences accumulated through years of exploration. Many travelers will never know the names of those who first identified certain routes. Yet they will use them. That is part of the mountain men's legacy. Historians generally agree that practical knowledge of Western mountain geography expanded significantly through the activities of trappers, guides, and explorers during this era. Scholars continue debating the relative importance of specific individuals and expeditions because information often moved through complex networks rather than single dramatic discoveries. The debate reflects an important reality. Knowledge is rarely created alone. It is gathered, shared, improved, passed forward. As evening approaches, camp is established in a sheltered valley surrounded by towering peaks. A fire crackles softly. The scent of wood smoke drifts through cool mountain air. Nearby, a stream provides fresh water. Above, the first stars begin appearing. The Continental Divide lies behind you now. Another threshold crossed. Another piece of the continent better understood. Yet countless miles remain ahead. More rivers, more valleys, more discoveries waiting beyond the next horizon. The mountains have revealed some of their secrets. Not all of them. Not yet. And so the mountain men continue onward, carrying hard-earned knowledge across one of the most extraordinary landscapes in the world. Beyond the mountain passes and distant valleys, beyond the rivers and trapping grounds, there remains another part of the story. It is quieter than exploration, less visible than adventure, but no less important. The mountain men are often remembered as solitary figures moving through wilderness alone. The image is powerful. A single rider beneath vast skies, a lone campfire beside a remote river. Sometimes that image is true, often it is incomplete. Behind the legend stand friendships, families, partnerships, and moments of loneliness that shape lives as surely as mountains and rivers do. You travel through a broad valley at sunset. Golden light spreads across the grasslands. The air smells faintly of sage and warm earth. A small stream winds through cottonwood trees whose leaves shimmer in the evening breeze. The landscape feels peaceful, almost reflective. It encourages thoughts that busy days often postpone. Many mountain men spend long periods away from settlements. Weeks become months. Months become years. Distances separate them from relatives, childhood friends, and familiar places. The separation leaves a mark, even on resilient people. One mainstream historical fact supported by research from institutions including Harvard University and Yale University is that many mountain men formed extensive personal and family connections throughout the West, including marriages and long-term relationships within frontier communities. Their lives were often more socially interconnected than popular myths suggest. The frontier is not only a story of isolation, it's also a story of connection. Human beings naturally create relationships wherever they go. The mountain men are no exception. Your mind drifts toward a riverside camp at dusk. Smoke rises gently from a fire. The smell of cooking food fills the cool air. Nearby, several travelers sit together after a long day. Conversation comes easily. Stories are exchanged. Jokes are shared. Silence occasionally settles among friends who need no words. These moments matter. Perhaps more than people realize at the time. Life on the frontier often depends upon trusted companions. A reliable partner can help during illness, assist with difficult travel, or provide support during dangerous situations. Trust becomes valuable currency, difficult to earn, easy to lose. The wilderness encourages cooperation because many challenges exceed the abilities of any single individual. A swollen river, a harsh winter, a shortage of food, a sick horse. Problems become easier when shared. You begin noticing how frequently mountain men travel with companions, despite the popular image of complete independence. Partnerships improve efficiency. Shared labor reduces workloads. Companionship eases the emotional burden of isolation. The practical advantages are obvious. The human advantages are equally important. Historical records frequently mention friendships formed through years of shared hardship. People who endure difficult journeys together often develop strong bonds. The frontier accelerates that process. Shared challenges create shared memories. The memories last. As morning transitions into afternoon, you ride along a river bordered by tall grass. Horse breath rises softly in the cool air. Waterbirds lift from the shoreline and disappear into the sky. The rhythm of travel leaves room for reflection, and reflection sometimes brings homesickness. The mountain men rarely speak of it in dramatic terms, yet surviving letters, journals, and recollections occasionally reveal longing for familiar places and people. Such feelings are entirely human. Adventure does not erase attachment. Distance does not erase memory. A person may admire a magnificent mountain sunrise while still wondering about family members hundreds of miles away. Both emotions can exist together. The frontier contains contradictions. Many mountain men eventually establish families within Western communities. Their lives become connected to local cultures, trade networks, and settlements over time. Some transition from wandering trappers into guides, traders, ranchers, or community members. Life changes, priorities change, people change. The young trapper seeking adventure may become a respected elder offering advice to younger travelers. The transformation often happens gradually, almost unnoticed. You pause beside a stand of cottonwood trees where leaves rustle softly overhead. Their sound blends with the steady movement of a nearby stream. The afternoon feels calm. For a moment, the wilderness seems less lonely, not because fewer miles separate camps, because human relationships bridge those miles. Many mountain men spend years developing connections that extend across enormous distances. News travels through trading posts and rendezvous gatherings. Friendships survive long absences. Familiar faces reappear unexpectedly after months apart. The frontier is vast, yet communities still emerge. Perhaps that is one of humanity's most consistent traits. People build relationships wherever they go, even in remote wilderness. The emotional reality of solitude deserves attention as well. Not every evening includes companionship. Not every journey occurs alongside trusted partners. Sometimes a person rides alone for days, sometimes weeks. The silence becomes profound. You imagine a solitary camp beneath a sky crowded with stars. The fire burns quietly. The smell of wood smoke drifts into cool night air. Beyond the circle of light stretches darkness and distance. It is beautiful and lonely, both at once. The mountain men learn to live with this balance. Solitude offers freedom and reflection, yet too much isolation can weigh heavily on the spirit. Human beings are not designed for complete separation. The frontier constantly reminds them of that truth. For a reflective pause, You watch the stars emerge one by one above distant ridges. A gentle breeze carries the scent of pine. Somewhere nearby, water flows steadily through the darkness. The moment feels timeless, yet every life remains temporary. People enter the frontier, people leave it. Relationships begin, relationships end. The mountains remain. Many historians emphasize that understanding the personal lives of mountain men helps correct oversimplified portrayals of frontier history. These individuals were not merely explorers and trappers, they were friends, partners, parents, spouses, and members of communities. The evidence supports a richer picture, a more human picture. Scholars continue debating certain aspects of family relationships and cultural interactions because surviving records are sometimes incomplete. Personal histories often leave fewer documents than commercial transactions or official reports. As a result, no complete agreement survives regarding every detail. Yet the broader reality remains clear. The frontier was filled with human connections, far more than legend sometimes suggests. Night settles fully across the valley. Campfires flicker in the distance. Horse bells sound faintly through the darkness. The familiar scent of wood smoke lingers in the cool air. You sit quietly beside the fire, listening, thinking, remembering. Beyond the mountains and rivers, beyond the exploration and trade, the story of the mountain men is also a story of people searching for belonging in a vast and changing world. And tomorrow, that world will continue revealing itself. The search for belonging continues, but the world around the mountain men is changing in ways they cannot fully see. While trappers move through remote valleys and high mountain passes, people in distant cities are becoming increasingly curious about the lands beyond the Mississippi River. The West is no longer a rumor. It is becoming a subject of national attention, slowly at first, then more rapidly. The information gathered by mountain men, traders, guides, and explorers begins flowing eastward through letters, reports, maps, newspaper articles, and conversations. What was once mysterious starts becoming imaginable, and what becomes imaginable often becomes reachable. You ride through a broad valley beneath a bright autumn sky. Cottonwood leaves shimmer in shades of gold. A cool breeze moves through the grass. The mountains stand blue and distant along the horizon. The landscape feels endless, yet people far away are beginning to picture places like this in their minds. That shift matters. One mainstream historical fact supported by research from institutions such as Princeton University and Columbia University is that information collected during the fur trade era significantly expanded public knowledge of Western geography. Reports from trappers, explorers, and surveyors helped transform the American understanding of lands beyond the settled frontier. Knowledge changes behavior. It changes expectations. It changes ambitions for generations. Many Americans knew little about the interior West beyond scattered descriptions and incomplete maps. Distances felt almost mythical. Rivers appeared uncertain. Mountains existed more as ideas than understood realities. The mountain men helped change that, not through speeches, not through grand political campaigns, through experience. Every route travelled adds information. Every river mapped reduces uncertainty. Every successful crossing demonstrates possibility. Your mind drifts toward a trading post where travellers gather around a rough wooden table. A map lies open before them. Fingers trace rivers, questions fill the air. What lies beyond that range? How difficult is the crossing? Where can water be found? Information becomes valuable because opportunity follows information. People naturally move toward places they can understand. The unknown discourages settlement. The known invites it. This process unfolds gradually. Few mountain men wake one morning and decide they are helping transform national geography. Most focus on practical concerns. Food, traps, weather, travel. Yet their observations accumulate into something larger. History often works that way. Large changes emerge from countless small actions. You notice the scent of paper and ink inside a trading post. Ledger books sit upon rough shelves. Reports are copied and shared. Travellers exchange observations gathered across enormous distances. A river described here may influence decisions hundreds of miles away. A mountain pass mentioned in conversation may appear on a future map. The frontier is slowly teaching the nation about itself. Historical records reveal growing interest in Western geography during the first half of the 19th century. Government officials, merchants, settlers, and investors all seek information about lands that remain only partially understood. Curiosity expands, so does ambition. The two often travel together. As autumn sunlight spreads across the valley, you begin noticing another change. More travelers appear on routes that once seemed isolated. Trade increases, communication improves, familiar pathways become busier. The frontier feels slightly smaller. Not physically, mentally. People now know more about it, and knowledge reduces distance. The mountain men serve as informal messengers between worlds. They carry stories from remote regions into settlements. They share practical information with newcomers. Their experiences help bridge the gap between wilderness and civilization. Some do this intentionally. Others simply answer questions. Either way, the effect remains significant. Your thoughts settle beside a campfire where several travelers discuss western rivers. The smell of wood smoke drifts upward into cool evening air. Sparks rise toward a sky gradually filling with stars. One traveler describes fertile valleys. Another mentions abundant wildlife. A third speaks about difficult mountain crossings. Together, their observations create a picture. Not a perfect picture, but a useful one. Many Eastern Americans develop increasingly detailed ideas about Western lands through such accounts. Some become inspired to travel. Others invest money in frontier enterprises. Still others simply follow developments with interest. The West enters the national imagination. Once there, it becomes difficult to ignore. For a reflective moment, you stand beside a river and watch sunlight dance across moving water. The current flows steadily toward distant destination. Information behaves similarly. It moves. It spreads. It connects places that once seemed separate. The mountain men become part of that. Their observations travel far beyond the valleys where they originated. The emotional significance of this transformation is easy to overlook. Imagine living in a nation where large portions of the continent remain poorly understood. Then gradually, year after year, the blank spaces shrink. Rivers gain names. Routes become known. Landscapes become familiar. The world feels larger and smaller at the same time. Larger because new regions are revealed. Smaller because those regions become understandable. The paradox is fascinating. The mountain men help create it. As afternoon fades into evening, long shadows stretch across the grasslands. Horses graze near the river. Camp is established beneath a stand of cottonwood trees. The familiar routines continue. Meals are prepared. Equipment is inspected. Plans are discussed. Yet beyond these ordinary activities, larger forces are gathering momentum. Interest in the West continues growing. The demand for information continues increasing. Future settlers are already beginning to imagine journeys that earlier generations would have considered impossible. Many historians agree that the fur trade era played a critical role in expanding American geographic knowledge. At the same time, scholars continue debating how different groups contributed to that process. Indigenous knowledge, commercial exploration, government expeditions, and local experience all influence the evolving understanding of Western lands. No single source explains everything. Knowledge emerges through many voices, many journeys, many observations. As darkness settles across the valley, distant mountains become silhouettes against the night sky. The smell of damp earth lingers after sunset. A gentle breeze moves through nearby trees. You sit beside the fire and listen to the river. Its steady flow feels familiar now, like the story itself. The mountain men continue exploring, trapping, and traveling. Yet increasingly, they are doing something else as well. They are helping reveal the American West to a nation eager to know what lies beyond the next horizon. And soon, that curiosity will bring even greater change. Curiosity rarely remains still for long. Once people begin hearing detailed accounts of western valleys, mountain passes, and distant rivers, many start imagining themselves travelling there. Information that once satisfied curiosity now begins encouraging movement. The frontier is changing again, not because the mountains have changed, not because the rivers have changed, because people have changed. The routes first travelled by trappers and explorers are gradually becoming pathways for others. What begins as narrow trails through wilderness will eventually carry families, merchants, missionaries, soldiers, and settlers. The transformation unfolds slowly. Then suddenly, you ride across an open plain beneath a sky filled with drifting clouds. The wind carries the scent of dry grass and sun-warmed earth. Far ahead, a faint trail crosses the landscape. At first glance, it seems insignificant, just a line across the ground. Yet history often travels along such lines. A route discovered for one purpose may later serve another entirely. One mainstream historical fact supported by research from institutions such as Yale University and the University of Oxford is that many migration corridors used by settlers during the 19th century followed pathways first identified or refined through earlier exploration and fur trade activity. The connection is profound. The mountain men are helping build roads they never intended to create. Most do not realize it, at least not immediately. Your mind drifts toward a river crossing that has become familiar to experienced trappers. Horses know where to enter the water. Travelers understand the safest approach. The route works because generations of observation have improved it. Knowledge creates reliability. Reliability encourages movement. Movement changes history. The process seems simple, yet its consequences are enormous. A mountain pass that once served a handful of trappers may eventually guide thousands of emigrants. A campsite known to experienced frontiersmen may become an important stop along a migration route. The landscape remains the same. Human use changes. You notice wagon tracks beside an older trail. They are still few in a number, but their appearance signals something important. New travelers are arriving, different travelers, people with different goals. The mountain men usually travel light. They move quickly when necessary. Their lives revolve around trapping, hunting, exploration, and trade. Settlers bring something else. Permanence. The distinction matters. A trapper may spend a season in a valley before moving on. A family may hope to remain there for generations. The frontier begins attracting both groups simultaneously. Historical records reveal growing westward migration during the decades following many of the major fur trade explorations. Information about routes, water sources, and terrain became increasingly valuable as more people considered journeys into Western territories. Practical knowledge saves lives. It always has. You follow a trail winding through rolling hills. The afternoon sun casts long shadows across the landscape. Grasshoppers leap from the path as horses pass. The air feels warm and still. The route seems ordinary now. That is precisely the point. Routes become powerful when they stop feeling extraordinary, when enough people trust them, when enough people use them. When uncertainty decreases, the mountain men help create that trust through experience. Many future emigrants will never meet the individuals who first travelled these pathways, yet they will benefit from their observations. They will cross rivers using established fords. They will navigate mountain passes already tested by earlier travellers. Knowledge leaves footprints, even when people do not. For a reflective moment, you stand on a ridge overlooking a broad valley. Below, a trail follows the natural contours of the land. A river glitters in the distance. The mountains rise beyond it. The route appears obvious. Now, but someone once had to discover it. Someone once had to decide whether it worked. Someone once had to take the risk. The mountain men often serve that role. Not alone. Of course, indigenous communities have long possessed deep geographic knowledge of these regions. Traders, guides, explorers, and local travellers all contribute. Yet the mountain men become important participants in the process of sharing practical information across expanding networks. The frontier is becoming connected, little by little. Your thoughts settle beside a camp where several travellers discuss future journeys. The smell of coffee drifts through the evening air. Horses graze nearby. Maps and notes are spread across a blanket. The conversation is full of possibilities. Could wagons pass through that valley? Would water be available during summer? How difficult is the mountain crossing? Questions like these are becoming increasingly common. The West is no longer merely a place to explore. It is becoming a destination. That shift creates mixed emotions among many mountain men. Some welcome increased activity and economic opportunity. Others prefer the solitude of earlier years. They value the quiet spaces that seem to shrink as more travelers arrive. Change Rockies pleases everyone. The frontier is no exception. You can almost feel the tension between old and new worlds. A trapper rides along a familiar river. Behind him comes a wagon carrying a family toward an uncertain future. Both are moving west, yet they represent different eras. One era is beginning, another is slowly ending. As evening deepens, the sounds of camp become softer. The crackle of a fire, the distant call of a night bird, the steady movement of water nearby. The ordinary details continue. They always do. Yet beneath those details, history is shifting direction. The pathways of the mountain men are becoming migration corridors. The exploration phase is gradually giving way to settlement. The transition will take years. Still, it has begun. Many historians agree that the routes developed during the fur trade era played a significant role in facilitating later Western migration. Scholars continue debating the relative importance of particular trails, passes, and individuals because the process involved many contributors across different regions. The debate reflects a larger truth. History is usually collaborative. Major changes emerge through the efforts of many people, many journeys, many decisions. As darkness settles fully across the valley, stars appear above the mountains, cool air drifts down from higher elevations, the scent of wood smoke lingers near the fire. You sit quietly and watch the flames. Beyond the camp stretches a continent in transition. The mountain men continue following trails through wilderness. Behind them, others are beginning to follow the same paths, and with every passing year, the American West grows a little less remote, a little more connected, and a little closer to the future that awaits it. The future arrives gradually, almost quietly at first. The rivers still flow through the same valleys. The mountains still rise above the horizon. Beaver dams still shape wetlands across the frontier. Yet beneath the familiar landscape, important changes are unfolding. The great beaver economy that helped create the mountain man era is beginning to weaken. Not all at once, not everywhere, but steadily enough that experienced trappers start noticing the signs. The world of the fur trade has entered a turning point. You travel beside a winding stream beneath a grey autumn sky. Fallen leaves drift across the water. The air smells of damp earth and wood smoke. A cool wind moves through the cottonwood trees lining the riverbank. Everything feels familiar. Yet something is different. Opportunity no longer seems quite as endless as before. One mainstream historical fact supported by research from institutions including Harvard University and the University of Chicago is that declining demand for beaver felt hats, combined with reductions in beaver populations across many regions, contributed significantly to the decline of the Rocky Mountain fur trade during the 19th century. Fashion and ecology begin pulling in the same direction. Neither favours the trappers. For decades, beaver pelts have fueled exploration, commerce, and adventure. Entire business networks depend upon their value, yet economic systems are rarely permanent. Consumer preferences change, markets shift, industries evolve. The fur trade is no exception. Your mind drifts toward a trading post where merchants examine stacks of pelts. The smell of leather and wood fills the air. Ledger books sit open on rough tables. Conversations sound more cautious than they once did. Prices matter. They always have. When prices fall, optimism often follows. A trapper who once expected strong returns now faces greater uncertainty. Long journeys and difficult winters seem less attractive when the rewards become less predictable. The calculations begin changing. The risks remain. the profits do not. At the same time, another challenge emerges. Years of intensive trapping have affected beaver populations in many areas. Regions that once produced abundant pelts become less productive. The richest valleys are no longer quite so rich. The easiest opportunities have already been found. Trappers must travel farther, work harder, accept greater uncertainty. Historical records reveal increasing concern among some participants in the fur trade as productive trapping grounds became more difficult to locate. The pattern does not occur everywhere at once, but the trend becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. The frontier is changing. Again, you follow a trail through rolling hills covered in autumn colours. Dry leaves crunch softly beneath your boots. The scent of pine drifts through cool afternoon air. A distant stream reflects the pale light of the season. The beauty remains. The economics do not. Many mountain men begin adapting to new realities. Some continue trapping despite declining returns. Others explore alternative occupations, guiding, trading, ranching, and various forms of frontier work become increasingly attractive. Adaptation becomes necessary. The wilderness has always rewarded adaptability. Now the marketplace demands it too, for a reflective moment. You pause beside a beaver pond. Water remains calm beneath an overcast sky. Reeds sway gently in the breeze, and the scene feels peaceful, almost timeless. Yet even this landscape reflects change. The relationship between humans and the environment has consequences. The beaver populations that once seemed inexhaustible prove more vulnerable than many people imagined. Abundance can create illusions. People often assume today's conditions will continue indefinitely. History repeatedly demonstrates otherwise. The mountain men experience that lesson firsthand. Your thoughts settle beside a campfire where several trappers discuss the future. Smoke curls upward into cool evening air. The smell of a simple meal drifts across camp. The conversation sounds different now, less focused on discovery, more focused on opportunity. What comes next? Where will the work be? How should a person prepare? Questions like these become increasingly common. The fur trade no longer feels permanent. The realization arrives gradually, then becomes impossible to ignore. Many experienced mountain men possess valuable skills that extend beyond trapping. They know Western geography. They understand local conditions. They can navigate difficult terrain. They have relationships across vast regions. These abilities retain value. Even as the beaver economy weakens, the frontier still needs guides. It still needs traders. It still needs people who understand the land. The mountain men are uniquely positioned to fill those roles. Not everyone succeeds equally. Change rarely distributes opportunities fairly. Some individuals adapt smoothly, others struggle. The transition creates uncertainty throughout the frontier economy. As afternoon fades toward evening, long shadows stretch across the valley. A cold breeze moves down from the mountains. Horses graze quietly near camp. The familiar rhythms continue, yet the future feels less predictable. That uncertainty carries emotional weight. Many mountain men entered the wilderness believing the fur trade would remain central to frontier life for years to come. Watching its decline can feel like watching a familiar world slowly disappear. Not suddenly, gradually. The change resembles autumn itself. Leaves do not fall all at once. They drift down one by one until the landscape looks different. The mountain man era follows a similar pattern. The signs accumulate, then transformation becomes undeniable. Historians generally agree that changing fashion trends played an important role in reducing demand for beaver felt hats. Silk alternatives became increasingly popular in certain markets, weakening one of the major economic foundations of the fur trade. A trend in distant cities influences lives in remote valleys. The connection seems surprising, yet it is real. The frontier has always been linked to larger economic forces. Scholars continue debating the relative importance of market changes versus environmental pressures in explaining the decline of the fur trade. Some emphasize shifting consumer preferences. Others focus more heavily on resource depletion. Most agree that multiple factors interacted to produce the outcome. History rarely has a single cause. Major transformations usually emerge through combinations of events. The decline of the beaver economy is no exception. Night settles slowly across the landscape. Stars begin appearing above dark mountain ridges. The smell of wood smoke lingers in the cool air. You sit beside the fire and watch the flames. For years, those flames illuminated camps built around the promise of beaver pelts and frontier opportunity. That promise is fading now. Not completely. Not yet. But enough to signal that the age of the mountain men is entering a new chapter. And soon, the changing West will ask them to become something different. The new chapter arrives not only through changing markets, but also through changing maps. The American West is entering an era when governments, borders, and political ambitions exert increasing influence over regions that once seemed distant from official authority. The wilderness remains vast. The mountains remain wild, yet political change is moving westward almost as steadily as the settlers themselves. The mountain men find themselves living through a transformation larger than any single trapping season, a transformation of nations. You travel across a broad plain beneath a sky filled with moving clouds. The wind carries the scent of dry grass. Far ahead, mountain ranges rise from the horizon like dark islands in an endless sea of land. The landscape appears timeless. Human boundaries are not. They change, sometimes quickly. One mainstream historical fact supported by research from institutions including Princeton University and Columbia University is that the middle decades of the 19th century witnessed dramatic territorial expansion by the United States, fundamentally altering the political geography of North America. These developments reach even the most remote frontiers. Eventually, no wilderness remains completely isolated from history. The mountain men understand geography better than most people of their era. They know rivers, valleys, passes, and trails. Yet increasingly they must also understand something else. Jurisdiction, authority, law. The frontier is becoming more organized and more complicated. Your mind drifts toward a trading post where travelers gather to exchange news. The smell of coffee and wood smoke fills the air. Horses stand tied nearby. Maps are spread across a rough wooden table. The conversation sounds different than it did years earlier. More politics, more discussion of territory, more questions about the future. Who controls this region now? Which routes remain open? What new regulations might appear? The questions reflect changing realities. As governments become more active in Western affairs, information about political developments grows increasingly important. Traders, settlers, military officers, and guides all pay attention. The frontier is no longer merely a place of exploration. It's becoming a place of administration. The shift happens unevenly. Some valleys remain remote, some regions see little immediate change, others experience rapid transformation. Historical records reveal that many mountain men adapted by serving as guides, scouts, interpreters, and advisors. Their knowledge of Western geography remained valuable even as the economic foundations of the fur trade weakened. The skills endure. The context changes. You follow a familiar trail through rolling hills. The smell of sagebrush drifts through warm afternoon air. A hawk circles above the valley below. The route itself has not changed, yet the people using it have. More emigrants appear, more surveyors, more military expeditions, more government representatives. The traffic increases year by year. For a reflective moment, you stand beside a river crossing that once felt remote. Water moves steadily around polished stones. Cottonwood leaves rustle in the breeze. The crossing seems busier now. The difference is subtle, but unmistakable. History often advances through such gradual shifts. A place remains physically familiar while becoming socially different. The mountain men witness this process repeatedly. Their world grows more connected and less isolated. The emotional experience of these changes varies widely. Some welcome new opportunities. Expanding settlements create demand for guides and expertise. Growing transportation networks offer economic possibilities. Others feel less enthusiastic. They miss the quieter frontier. The older frontier, the one that seemed larger, the one that contained more uncertainty and perhaps more freedom. Both perspectives are understandable. Change rarely feels identical to everyone. Your thoughts settle beside a campfire where several travelers discuss recent developments. The flames cast warm light across weathered faces. The smell of wood smoke drifts upward into the evening air. One traveler speaks optimistically about future growth. Another worries about losing familiar ways of life. A third simply listens. The conversation reflects a broader transition occurring throughout the West. Old systems are fading, new systems are emerging. The mountain men occupy a unique position between those worlds. They remember earlier decades when many Western regions remained known primarily to indigenous communities, trappers, and a small number of explorers. They also witnessed the arrival of larger populations and expanding institutions. Few groups experienced the transition as directly. The contrast is striking. A route once travelled by a handful of trappers may now host wagon traffic. A remote valley may contain new settlements. Information that once moved slowly through personal networks now circulates more widely. The pace of change accelerates. As evening deepens, the first stars appear above distant mountains. A cool breeze descends from higher elevations. Nearby horses shift quietly in the darkness. The familiar decals remain comforting. Firelight, night air, the smell of leather and some smoke. Yet beyond the campsite, the broader world continues changing. The frontier is becoming part of something larger, a national project, a continental transformation. Many mountain men respond pragmatically. They adapt their occupations, they apply their geographic knowledge in new ways. Some become respected guides for emigrant groups. Others assist survey teams or military expeditions. Adaptability has always been one of their greatest strengths. It remains so now. The frontier rewards those willing to evolve. Historians generally agree that territorial expansion and increasing government involvement significantly reshaped the American West during this period. These developments influenced migration patterns, economic opportunities, and the daily lives of people living throughout frontier regions. The evidence is extensive. The consequences are lasting. Scholars continue debating the precise impact of these changes on different communities because experiences varied considerably across regions. Some areas transformed rapidly, others changed more gradually. No single interpretation fully captures every local experience. History remains complex, especially on a frontier. Yet one reality becomes increasingly clear. The era of the mountain men is moving toward its final stages, not because the mountains are disappearing, not because wilderness no longer exists, because the conditions that created the classic mountain man lifestyle are changing. Markets have shifted, populations are growing, governments are expanding their reach. The West is entering a new age. Night settles fully across the valley. Stars fill the sky above dark ridges. The river continues its steady journey through the landscape. You sit quietly beside the fire, listening to the sounds of the frontier. Some are familiar, others are new. Together, they signal a world in transition. And the mountain men, as always, continue adapting to whatever lies beyond the next horizon. The horizon still calls to the mountain men. Even as the world around them changes, markets decline, settlements expand, governments become more present. Yet the instinct to explore remains difficult to extinguish. For many veterans of the frontier, the wilderness still holds unanswered questions, still holds hidden valleys, still holds distant rivers, still holds the promise of discovery. And so, even as one era begins fading, a final generation of remarkable expeditions continues pushing into the far reaches of the West. The great age of exploration is not quite finished. Not yet. You travel through a high valley beneath a brilliant summer sky. Snow lingers on distant peaks. A cold stream tumbles over smooth stones. The scent of pine and wildflowers drifts through the clear mountain air. The landscape feels timeless, as though it exists outside history, yet history is moving through it all the same. One mainstream historical fact supported by research from institutions including Yale University and Stanford University is that experienced mountain men continued contributing to exploration and geographic knowledge long after the peak years of the fur trade. Their expertise remained valuable during an era of rapid Western expansion. The role changes. The knowledge does not. Many veteran trappers possess something few others can match: decades of first-hand experience. They know which rivers flood during spring. They know which passes remain open longest. They know where water can be found during dry seasons. The land has become familiar to them. Not completely. No wilderness is ever completely known, but familiar enough. Your mind drifts toward a narrow canyon where a small group of travelers advances cautiously. The walls rise steeply on either side. Sunlight reaches the canyon floor only in scattered patches. The route is difficult, yet someone has traveled it before. Someone has remembered it. Someone has passed the knowledge forward. This transfer of experience becomes increasingly important as more people move west. The last great exploratory journey is often focused less on trapping and more on understanding, surveying routes, identifying resources, improving geographic knowledge. The purpose evolves, the spirit remains. You notice how different these expeditions sometimes feel compared to earlier trapping ventures. The search for beaver is no longer the central motivation. Instead, travelers seek information that can support migration, transportation, and development. The frontier is changing its priorities. The mountain men adapt accordingly. Historical records describe numerous former trappers serving as guides for exploratory missions throughout the 19th century. Their practical knowledge often proved invaluable when navigating unfamiliar terrain. Experience shortens uncertainty. That has always been true. It remains true now as afternoon sunlight warms the valley. You follow a trail winding toward higher ground. The smell of sun-warmed stone mixes with the scent of alpine vegetation. Wind brushes against your face as you climb. The view expands with every step. Valleys unfold below. Mountain ranges stretch into the distance. Rivers of Kirsty trickle silver lines through the landscape. The scale remains breathtaking, even for those who know it well. For a reflective moment, you pause on a ridge and look westward. The horizon seems endless. The land beyond remains vast despite decades of exploration. This is an important reminder. The mountain men never completely reveal the West. No one does. The continent remains too large, too complex, too varied. Yet each expedition contributes another piece to the larger picture. That cumulative effort matters. The emotional tone of these later journeys often differs from earlier adventures. There is sometimes a sense of transition, a recognition that the frontier is becoming more familiar to outsiders. The wilderness feels slightly less isolated, slightly less mysterious. Not because it has changed, because knowledge has expanded. Many veteran mountain men understand this better than anyone. They have witnessed the transformation firsthand. They remember when certain valleys existed mainly as rumors. They remember when mountain passes remained unknown to most Americans. They remember when maps contained large blank spaces. Those memories carry weight. They provide perspective. Your thoughts settle beside a campfire at the edge of a mountain meadow. The smell of wood smoke drifts through cool evening air. Nearby, horses graze among patches of tall grass. The familiar rhythms continue. Meals are prepared, stories are exchanged, routes are discussed. Some things never change. Yet beneath the routine lies an awareness that time is moving forward. The generation that opened much of the western frontier is growing older. New travelers are arriving. New priorities are emerging. The cycle continues, as it always has. You can almost hear the quiet reflection and conversations around the fire. Not sadness exactly, more like recognition. Recognition that every era eventually gives way to another. The mountain men understand this because they have spent their lives observing change. Seasons change. Rivers change. Markets change. Communities change. Why would history be different? As darkness settles across the meadow, the stars emerge one by one above the mountains. The air grows cooler. The scent of pine becomes more noticeable. The wilderness still feels immense, still beautiful, still capable of inspiring awe. That truth remains constant. Many historians note that some of the final great exploratory contributions of mountain men occurred during a period when settlement and development were accelerating across the West. Their knowledge helped bridge the gap between earlier frontier exploration and later national expansion. The timing is significant. They stand between worlds. One world is fading, another is arriving. Scholars continue debating the precise significance of certain late expeditions because different regions experience change at different rates. Some areas remained remote for decades, others transformed rapidly. No simple timeline captures every local story. The frontier resists simplification. It always has. Yet broad patterns remain visible. The classic mountain man era is nearing its conclusion. Its influence is not. Night deepens around the camp. A nearby stream murmurs softly through the darkness. Firelight flickers across weathered faces. You sit quietly and watch sparks rise into the star-filled sky. The final great expeditions continue. The last chapters are still being written, and although the age of the mountain men is approaching its end, their knowledge, roots, and experiences are already becoming part of something larger, something that will shape the future of the American West for generations to come. The final expeditions gradually give way to new responsibilities. The mountain men who once spent years trapping remote streams now find themselves in a different position. Their greatest asset is no longer the beaver pelt. It is knowledge. Knowledge of rivers, knowledge of trails, knowledge of mountain passes, knowledge of the land itself. And as increasing numbers of people move westward, that knowledge becomes more valuable than ever. The frontier still contains uncertainty. It simply serves different purposes now. You ride across a wide valley beneath a pale morning sky. Dew glistens on the grass. A cool breeze carries the scent of damp earth and cottonwood leaves. In the distance, a line of wagons moves slowly along a familiar trail. The sight would have seemed unusual years earlier. Now this is becoming common. The West is filling with travellers. Many of them need guidance. One mainstream historical fact supported by research from institutions including Harvard University and Princeton University is that numerous former mountain men became guides, scouts, interpreters, and advisors during the period of expanding Western migration. Their first-hand knowledge of terrain made them valuable to emigrants, surveyors, and military expeditions. The role changes. The expertise remains. You can almost feel the shift in identity. A trapper once searched for beaver signs along a stream. Now he helps families locate safe campsites. A man who once navigated mountain passes for commercial reasons now guides wagon trains through the same terrain. The trail is familiar. The travellers are not. Your mind drifts toward a river crossing crowded with activity. Horses stand near the water's edge. Wagons wait their turn. Children watch the current move past. Teamsters discuss the safest route. The atmosphere feels different from a trapping camp. More permanent, more hopeful, more complicated. The emigrants carry entire lives with them. Furniture, tools, seeds, personal possessions, dreams of future homes. The mountain men understand the risks these travellers face. Rivers remain dangerous. Weather remains unpredictable. Distances remain immense. Experience allows them to anticipate problems before they occur. That skill saves time. Sometimes it saves lives. Historical records describe many former trappers serving as guides for wagon trains moving westward. Their familiarity with water sources, grazing areas, and seasonal conditions often proved essential during long journeys. The value of local knowledge cannot be overstated, especially in unfamiliar country. You follow a well-worn trail through rolling hills. The afternoon sun warms the landscape. Grass waves gently beneath the wind. The smell of sagebrush drifts through the air. The route looks obvious now, but experience teaches otherwise. A good trail is more than a line on the ground. It represents accumulated knowledge about terrain, water, weather, and practicality. The mountain men carry that knowledge and memory. Years of observation become a resource, one that others increasingly need. As settlement expands, governments also seek assistance. Surveyors require guides. Military units need scouts. Exploratory parties benefit from experienced leadership. The demand remains steady. The context continues changing for a reflective moment. You stand beside a broad river and watch sunlight shimmer across moving water. The current flows with quiet confidence. The scene feels familiar. The purpose feels different. Years earlier, a mountain man might have crossed this river while searching for trapping grounds. Now he may be helping dozens of emigrants make the same crossing safely. The landscape remains. Human priorities evolve. That evolution shapes the final years of the mountain man generation. Many adapt successfully. Their knowledge commands respect. Their experience creates opportunities. Some establish businesses. Others work as professional guides for decades. The transition is not always easy, but it is often possible. Adaptability has always been one of their strengths. It remains so now. Your thoughts settle beside an evening camp shared by emigrants and guides. The smell of wood smoke fills the cooling air. Meals are prepared over open fires. Horses graze nearby. The atmosphere feels busy. Children laugh. Adults discuss tomorrow's route. Someone studies a map by firelight. The frontier is becoming more populated, not crowded, but noticeably busier than before. The mountain men witness this transformation firsthand. They remember earlier decades when long stretches of travel passed without encountering another group. Those memories remain vivid. The contrast grows stronger each year. The emotional response varies from person to person. Some guides enjoy helping newcomers. They appreciate the steady work and social interaction. Others feel nostalgic for the older frontier, the quieter frontier, the one that seemed boundless. Neither perspective is unusual. Change often produces mixed feelings, especially among people who experience it directly. You notice the sound of wagon wheels being repaired near the edge of camp. Hammer strikes echo briefly through the evening air. The scent of fresh-cut wood mixes with the smell of smoke. Small details reveal larger trends. Repairing a wagon would have mattered little during the height of the fur trade. Now it matters greatly. The infrastructure of migration is replacing the infrastructure of trapping. The frontier is reinventing itself. Many historians emphasize that former mountain men played important roles during Western migration because they possessed practical geographic knowledge unavailable elsewhere. Their contributions helped connect earlier exploration with later settlement. The connection is significant. Without guides, information spreads more slowly. Without experience, mistakes become more common. Without local knowledge, journeys become more difficult. The mountain men help reduce uncertainty. That may be one of their greatest legacies. Scholars continue debating the relative influence of particular guides and scouts because records vary in detail. Some individuals became famous. Others performed equally valuable work while receiving less attention from history. Recognition is uneven. Contribution is not. Many people shape history without becoming household names. The mountain men are no exception. Night settles across the valley. Stars appear above distant hills. The air grows cooler. Campfires flicker against the darkness. You sit quietly beside one of those fires, listening to the sounds of a changing frontier, conversations, horse bells, flowing water, the crackle of burning wood. The wilderness remains vast, but the pathways through it are becoming more familiar. The mountain men help create those pathways. Now they help others follow them, and in doing so, they carry the American West from one era into the next. The trails remain. The rivers continue their journeys. The mountains stand where they have always stood. Yet as the years pass, something interesting begins to happen. The mountain men start becoming legends. Not immediately, not while they're still crossing rivers and guiding wagon trains. But gradually, stories grow, memories soften, adventures become larger in the telling. The line between history and folklore becomes more difficult to see. This is often how historical memory works. Real lives become symbolic. Complex people become characters. The mountain men are no exception. You travel through a quiet valley beneath a sky brushed with the colours of late afternoon. Golden light rests upon distant hills. A cool breeze carries the scent of pine and dry grass. The landscape feels familiar now, almost like an old friend. It's the same landscape that helped create the legends. and the same landscape that helps us understand the reality behind them. One mainstream historical fact supported by research from institutions including Stanford University and Columbia University is that popular images of mountain men developed through a combination of historical experience, published memoirs, frontier storytelling, newspaper accounts, and later literature. The legend did not appear by accident. It evolved piece by piece, story by story. Your mind drifts toward a campfire where travelers exchange tales beneath a star-filled sky. The smell of wood smoke rises gently into the cool night air. One story concerns a difficult winter. Another describes a dangerous river crossing. A third involves an encounter with wildlife. Each retelling adds emphasis.
Perhaps a little drama.
Perhaps a little embellishment. Human beings have always enjoyed a good story, especially stories about distant places. The mountain men provide plenty of material. Many of their experiences genuinely are extraordinary. Months of isolation, harsh winters, exploration of unfamiliar under difficult conditions. The reality is already impressive. Yet legends often demand something more. They simplify, they exaggerate, they transform. The result is a frontier hero who sometimes resembles the historical mountain man and sometimes does not. Historical records reveal both similarities and differences between popular myths and documented experiences. Real mountain men display remarkable skill, resilience, and adaptability. They also experience mistakes, failures, doubts, and dependence upon others. Reality is human. Legends prefer certainty. You follow a trail winding beside a river. Water glitters beneath the afternoon sun. Cottonwood leaves rustle overhead. The air smells clean and fresh after recent rain. The scene encourages reflection. What do people choose to remember? What do they choose to forget? The answers matter. Many popular stories emphasize individual independence. A lone figure confronting wilderness through courage and determination. The image is powerful, but incomplete. The mountain men often rely upon partnerships, trade networks, indigenous knowledge, and community connections. Their successes emerge from cooperation as well as personal ability. The historical record makes this clear. Yet legends tend to focus on individuals. Individuals are easier to celebrate. Your thoughts settle beside a weathered trail marker standing near a river crossing. Thousands of travelers have passed nearby over the years. Some are remembered, many are not. This reality shapes frontier history. A handful of names become famous. Countless others contribute quietly. Their efforts matter just as much. The opening of the American West is not the achievement of a single hero or even a small group of heroes. It is a collective process, a vast network of journeys, observations, and experiences. The mountain men are important participants within that network, not the only participants, not isolated participants, part of something larger. For a reflective moment, you sit beside flowing water and listen to its steady movement. The sound feels timeless. The river does not care about legends. It simply flows. History often works the same way. People create stories about the past. The past itself remains unchanged. Modern historians spend considerable effort examining frontier myths, because those myths influence how people understand Western history. Separating documented evidence from later storytelling helps create a more accurate picture. The goal is not to destroy legends. The goal is to understand them, and to understand the people behind them. Many mountain men prove more interesting in reality than in folklore. Their lives contain complexity, cultural exchange, economic ambition, personal relationships, adaptation to changing circumstances. These details enrich the story. They do not diminish it. Your mind drifts toward an evening gathering, where older frontiersmen share memories with younger listeners. The fire crackles softly. The smell of smoke mixes with the scent of leather and horses. Some memories are precise. Others have softened with time. That is natural. natural. Human memory is not a perfect archive. It is a living process. Stories change as they travel from one generation to the next. The Mountain Man legend grows through that process. As darkness settles across the valley, stars emerge above the distant ridges. Cool air flows down from the mountains. The familiar sounds of camp gradually become quieter. The atmosphere feels thoughtful, almost contemplative. The frontier itself is becoming part of history now. People are beginning to look backward, to remember, to interpret, to explain. Historians generally agree that popular portrayals of mountain men often emphasize independence and adventure while underrepresenting the broader social, economic, and cultural context in which they lived. Modern scholarship seeks a more balanced understanding. The effort continues, and likely always will. Scholars continue debating specific aspects of frontier memory because different sources sometimes present different perspectives. Memoirs, newspapers, oral traditions, and official records do not always align perfectly. No clear agreement survives regarding every detail. Such debates are healthy. They encourage deeper understanding. They remind us that history is not merely a collection of stories. It is also an investigation, a search for context, a search for truth. Night deepens around the camp. Firelight flickers across familiar faces. The smell of wood smoke lingers in the cool air. You sit quietly and watch the stars. The legends remain. The realities remain too. Together, they form the memory of the mountain men, a memory that continues shaping how people imagine the American West long after the final trapping camps have disappeared into history. The stories remain long after the campfires have faded. The rivers still wind through valleys first travelled by generations of mountain men. Trails still cross passes once known only to experienced guides. Mountain peaks still catch the first light of dawn exactly as they did 2 centuries ago. The landscape endures, yet the world surrounding it has changed profoundly. The age of the Mountainer men has come to an end. Their influence has not, as you travel one final time across the American West. The scale of their legacy begins to reveal itself. The valleys feel familiar now. The rivers no longer seem mysterious. The mountain passes connect rather than divide. This transformation did not happen by accident. People helped make it possible. Among them were the mountain men. One mainstream historical fact supported by research from institutions including Harvard University and the University of Oxford is that the fur trade era played a significant role in expanding geographic knowledge of Western North America, helping create conditions that later supported migration, mapping, transportation, and settlement. The contribution reaches far beyond trapping, far beyond commerce, far beyond individual adventure. You ride through a broad valley beneath a sky painted with the soft colours of early morning. A cool breeze carries the scent of pine and fresh water. Sunlight slowly spreads across distant ridges. The scene feels peaceful, almost timeless, yet beneath that calm landscape lies a history of movement, discovery, adaptation, and change. The mountain men rarely set out to build the future. Most sought opportunity. Some sought freedom, others sought adventure. Yet history often assigns larger consequences to ordinary decisions. A trapper follows a river in search of beaver. Years later, emigrants use the same route. A guide identifies a practical mountain pass. Decades later, transportation networks follow that corridor. The connection is not always obvious, but it is real. Your mind drifts toward a familiar trail winding through foothills. Grass sways gently beneath the wind. A hawk circles high above the valley. The trail looks simple. It never was. Every established route represents countless observations, decisions, and experiences accumulated over time. The mountain men contribute significantly to that process. Their knowledge helps transform unknown regions into understood geography. Historical records reveal that Western migration accelerated dramatically during the decades following the height of the fur trade. Settlers, merchants, surveyors, soldiers, and travellers increasingly moved across landscapes once known primarily to indigenous communities. Explorers and trappers. The West became more connected, more populated, more accessible. The changes carried both opportunities and consequences. History always does. The mountain men lived at the center of those transformations for a reflective moment. You pause beside a river that has appeared throughout this story in many forms, sometimes frozen, sometimes flooded, sometimes calm beneath summer sunlight. The water keeps moving, generation after generation. The river reminds you that history is not a collection of isolated events. It is a continuous flow. One era leads into another. One decision influences future choices. The mountain men belong to that flow. They are neither the beginning nor the end. They are a bridge between worlds. One world consists of vast regions unfamiliar to many Americans. The other consists of an increasingly connected continent linked by routes, maps, and migration. The mountain men help connect those worlds. As afternoon sunlight warms the landscape, you notice how many elements of their story remain surprisingly human. Ambition, curiosity, friendship, loneliness, adaptation. These experiences feel familiar even across centuries. The mountains provide a dramatic setting. The people provide the heart of the story. The mountain men are not merely symbols of frontier life. They are individuals navigating uncertainty, trying to build futures, trying to understand unfamiliar landscapes, trying to make choices within changing circumstances. Their humanity remains visible beneath the legends. And perhaps that is why their stories continue to endure. You settle beside one final campfire. The smell of wood smoke drifts through cool evening air. The familiar crackle of burning logs fills the silence between thoughts. The scene feels comforting, like returning to a place you know well. The mountains stand dark against the horizon. Stars begin appearing overhead. A nearby stream murmurs softly through the gathering night. The frontier feels both distant and present. Distant because the era has passed. Present because its influence remains. Many historians agree that understanding the mountain men requires looking beyond simple myths of rugged individualism. Their achievements emerge through exploration, cooperation, adaptation, and relationships with wider economic and cultural networks. The evidence points toward a richer story, a more complete story, a more interesting story. Scholars continue debating aspects of the mountain men's legacy because historical change rarely produces a single outcome. Some emphasize geographic discovery, others focus on economic development, environmental consequences, cultural exchange, or migration. Each perspective contributes something valuable. No single interpretation captures everything. History is too complex for that. Yet broad agreement exists on one essential point. The mountain men helped open pathways through the American West. Their journeys expanded geographic knowledge. Their experiences influenced future generations. Their stories became part of the larger narrative of a continent in motion. Night settles fully across the landscape. The stars shine brightly above the mountain. Cool air carries the scent of pine, water, and distant earth. You sit quietly beside the final fire, listening. The river flows, the wind moves through the trees, the mountains remain, and somewhere beyond the darkness, the echoes of old trails still linger across valleys and passes once travelled by the explorers who helped open the American West. Their era is over. Their legacy continues. For thousands of miles and many long evenings, you have travelled beside rivers, crossed mountain passes, endured winter storms, followed forgotten trails, and shared campfires with the mountain men who helped reveal the American West. Along the way, you witnessed not only exploration and adventure, but also friendship, resilience, curiosity, and change. Perhaps what stands out most is how human these figures truly were beneath the legends. They faced uncertainty, adapted to new realities, and left behind pathways that shaped generations to come. If there was a moment, person, landscape, or story that stayed with you tonight, I would love to hear about it in the comments. Share what fascinated you most and where you are listening from. And if you enjoyed this journey through frontier history, there are many more stories waiting for you on the channel. Until our next adventure through the past, thank you for spending this time here. And thank you for keeping history alive through your curiosity. Blessings to you and your family.